So, a bit of cleanup before we get on with the show today. First off, for those wondering about the Megaman.exe model kit that released late last year, it's actually really good. I like it. It's going to be on my shelf for a while now. I know some people in my audience actually build model kits themselves, so take a shot at it. Second, yes, I've been keeping tabs on the events with Capcom and the upcoming, at the time of recording this, release of the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. And if all goes well, I might be able to end this retrospective on the Battle Network games by using the Legacy Collection version of Mega Man Battle Network 6. Something that was beyond a long-shot possibility when I first started this retrospective back in 2016. Sidebar, I hate that it's been taking me this long to get through all of these. Originally, these were going to be just once-a-year things amidst other material, but it can all blame real life, deaths in my family, full-time work, the utter hell that was attempting to record Battle Network 4, and the freaking pandemic on reasons why it'll likely be 2025 before I release a review on Gregor and Falzer. Hell, it might take longer than that depending on if there's more complications trying to review the anime, which itself might pass the mark of the 20th anniversary of its ending at this rate before the last episodes of it may get a fan sub for them. It would actually be hilarious if I publish a review of Battle Network 6 in the 20th anniversary of its release, but not in a way I would like, as it'd mean I took 10 freaking years to review 7 games in a series. Regardless, it is unfortunate that at this time of this news, they don't seem that interested in doing the same for the Star Force games, or Mega Man Legends for that matter. But at least in Star Force's case, it makes a bit of sense as, well, Star Force never sold what Capcom wanted it to. There's certainly those that want what happened to the Mega Man ZX games in the Zero ZX collection to happen with them in how those DS games got ported onto the Nintendo Switch. And hopefully that may come to pass. Second, for those wondering what happened to all the videos to date on the Rockman.exe anime in 2022, that would be due to the conduct of ShowPro, who these days own the rights to said anime. ShowPro has an unbalanced track record of takedowns, and mass reported a number of the Rockman.exe videos, so I had to remove all of them from YouTube to save my channel from being copyright striked to death. Sadly, I am far from the first to suffer that, the one most infamous for them having that happen to them being the YouTuber Suede, who had all of his Pokemon videos, even the ones that were just still frames of the anime, set to recap analysis and dialogue, taken down, and had a slap lawsuit filed against him with no means for him to respond to it. Because of that, I am uncertain whether I really should continue with the Rockman anime videos beyond putting together collections of all the videos that got hit, with as much of the footage as plausible converted to still frame images, and then doing a still frame review style for the remainder, which admittedly I could do and have been working towards. I'm going to be experimenting with that, which is why this video is actually coming out so early in the year in regards to all that. As if I'm going to continue with doing Access and Stream before I do Battle Network 6, I might as well try it that way, since scripts for all episodes of Rockman Access have been written since 2021. This caveat is just for those out there who may come to find my videos on these games later, saw that I was going to do reviews of the anime, and then may ask themselves, what happened to him doing that, if I fail to maintain an online accessible version of said videos? And with those status updates on all of that out of the way, so we can talk about the subject of the actual title of this video, well, generally speaking, Battle Network 5 is considered the third best Battle Network game. At worst, as I've mentioned, 5 being in competition with Battle Network 2 for that slot, though there are also those that view it as competing with 6 and 3 for best. This is due to a few unique factors, part of it that many feel makes it superior to the second outing, despite the lack of hub style and the closer feel of the story, and a vast improvement over what was suffered in Battle Network 4. I mean, let's face it, Battle Network 2 is a bit all over the place with how it has Lan and Mega Man travel around erratically to fight Gospel instead of it being a more direct threat, which would warrant his involvement. Whereas Battle Network 5 more clearly builds on continuity for getting Lan involved, and why he would be a critical member to the team's goals with his long showcased operating ability that even Chad by this point recognizes and respects. Thing is, it really feels like Capcom's development team for these games learned from some of the mistakes of Battle Network 4. Strong story to accent gameplay revisions, increased synergy to the form changes, have the backtracking, if you must include it, have a point, and make the characters you introduced matter to the story. Granted, the way it does it here is by making 12 of the characters slotted into the 2 respective teams pretty much replaceable by half their number. but that's the consequence to tightening the story leash instead of having them play out in a standalone character-customized mini-quest. All 6 of these characters play key roles in each version even if they are doubled up, and while their place in the story is redundant to both versions, they still manage to succeed on accenting differences in character. And honestly, as much as I love Stream, which very loosely adapts the premises of this game, it didn't balance all the characters that well either. Many of them also feel neglected despite them all getting enough screen time to make it seem like a vast, cohesive team, which did switch around the members. I could name several series with large hero teams that do such worse, though, since, well, the show's core from the beginning was on LAN and Megaman with some occasional help from others, as opposed to ignoring the rest of the team just for one person when the focus of the story was supposed to be on the full team. Thus, related to that, the key to which version of Battle Network 5 you play, Team Colonel or Team Protoman, depends on the navies you partner with in the game and the soul unisons you gain. And once again, like Battle Network 4, it's pretty damn lopsided in Team Colonel's favor, as the Team Protoman navies and souls, they suck. They suck so hard! I really don't get how they fucked this up, too, as once again they seem to be learning from Battle Network 4 and how they reshuffled a bunch of the alignments for the Soul Unisons, but then made all of Team Protomans vastly underpowered. The battleships for them once again didn't fit easily into the good battleship folders, or the abilities given to them did not offset their weaknesses, especially in comparison to Team Colonel. All of Team Colonel's navies elements have an amazingly high synergy to them. I can easily build massively effective chip folders that take advantage of near every Soul Unison simultaneously. It's that excellent a schemata, and I'm not even really thinking that hard about how to do so. As Team Colonel has Soul Unison forms for Break, Stealth, Wood, Plus, Water, and Object chips. All but Object chips working ridiculously well in tandem with each other. The only way to make it stronger would be to have a sword element, as the Stealth chip Double Soul has abilities which improve the power of sword chips immensely. So in reality, thanks to that one, it's almost as if you get a 6-chip element synergy out of 5 souls. Whereas Team Protoman has Elec, Wind, Fire, Cursor, Recovery, and Sword element chips that form the basis of the Soul Unisons. None, bar the Wind element making it easier to strike with Sword and Close Range chips, are that helpful without dedicating a chip folder to that soul. But that has been discouraged in this game, as you're not just operating Megaman, but the other navies you gain the soul form too. But overall, there is no synergistic strategy for these Soul Unisons, much like was the problem in Battle Network 4, and the navies likewise in comparison seem, frankly, inferior to the ones who had their contemporary chip elements related to a unison in the last game. Yeah, even in comparison to ones that were the exact same last game. As I mentioned, Searchman and Search Soul have their chip elements reassigned from Stealth chips to the new Cursor chips. But Cursor chips are ridiculously awful to use, as they require you aim them at a very specific panel for their effect to hit, which is very easy to fuck up. With exception to solely the asterisk code chip copy damage, their only point to existing in a folder is for use with triggering the soul form, and that's wasteful. Thus, I can't realistically use half the souls in Team Protoman because the chips don't work together, don't work in the first place with how I play, or the soul form itself is garbage. And something that actively annoyed me with this game's team assignments, again because of the Team Protoman version, was the exclusion of mail-in role from being a team member in favor of the newly introduced characters Jasmine and Medi.exe. This is mainly because Medi is the absolute most useless Navi in the entire franchise. The one that isn't Glide at any rate. Hers is the only double soul I never use despite how useful recovery chips are, because it's that worthless in just using medical pellet to give standard battle chips a status ability. As opposed to, I don't know, a recovery ability? Okay, yeah, there is a recovery pellet, but all of them are randomly generated. If you need to heal, you have a 1 in 5 chance of getting that pellet, but you sacrifice the recovery chip you could have used to get it. And I'm not even getting into using the Dark Recovery Dark chip to use Chaos Unison for its healing ability, because that's a whole nother can of worms of relying on something to screw you over for your healing payday. As I said when I reviewed Battle Network 4, the general goodwill between the main counterpart navies was the decisive factor for many between getting Red Sun or Blue Moon back before everyone learned how bugged up Blue Moon was, or the versus battle effectiveness of Royal Soul's healing abilities. Here, however, they had the opportunity to rectify that as making Mail and Roll eventually recruitable for another recycle from the last game Double Soul like Numberman, Protoman, and Surgeman already were, possibly keying it to Land rescuing his friend's navies before the endgame of the campaign that allow her to join, since Medi's slotted as one of the last Double Souls and team members earned in the game. Hell, it ties into the prior game's arc with her to try and reinforce her wish to earn Land's respect to stand aside him and not be just someone that needs to be protected as the brothers needed to save her or Roll in every other game before this. And once again make it gel with the anime stream, where they did do all of that. Hell, once Mail joins Team Cross Fusion, she's stuck to her eventual paramour like glue. But instead there, she ends up replacing Ribita in the lineup, which leaves the crew without a specialist in water attacks while doubling up on the team medics. Okay, that is smart since the team eventually has 13 members. But in the context of the games themselves, because of how useless Medi is, the only effective healer Navi ends up being Tomahawk Man's Tomahawk Soul in Team Colonel. Yes, the guy who walks around with a giant axe that attacks with a life sword's radius was brought on as the team's tanking specialist to dish out the maximum potential damage, and he is a better healer than the net Navi whose entire theme is that of a medic.
The medic just makes them more comfortable while they die.
Yeah, that is how bad Medi is at her actual team role. You see how they kept sabotaging themselves with game balance here? To make things worse in Team Protoman's case, while they recognize the continuity of Red Sun by Land recognizing Rika when he joins the team, continuity-wise, Team Colonel is considered the more canon of the two, due to the character Beryl appearing in Battle Network 6 with Land knowing him personally, as well as one of the other characters getting into a discussion with Land about Dark Miyabi and Gregor, and Tomahawk Man's operator Dingo also appearing in Falzer, both of whom Land first meets in Team Colonel, and act as if he knows them when mentioned later. So with the various gameplay issues all ways around, it was not a good time to be a Protoman fan as the Team Protoman version just ended up ignored. Twice. Then again, all events from these games and also the fourth entry could be taken as equally canon. In Battle Network 4's case, as each scenario exclusive to a version was a self-contained story. And the Battle Network 5 teams actually made up of all 13 members, which we only got to see half of in each game. Which is purportedly explained by why there are two versions of the game with this one. Apparently, I'm not the only one that thought Team Protoman was terrible, as Team Colonel was originally, once again, the Megaman 3 Black version to the original. A patched, bug-fixed release with new different content to justify its purchase, released almost 4 months apart from one another, which eventually was released as a compilation game, and the one I'm reviewing, Mega Man Battle Network 5 Double Team, or as it's known in Japan, Twin Leaders, which is a far better title, quite frankly. And as should have been tellable from the footage I've been showing, I'm not reviewing the games individually, but said compilation with new content Nintendo DS release. But there's problems with trying to play that version yourselves if you don't have the original cartridge for it. Yeah, every ROM version of Twin Leaders I've ever found has problems in its emulation. So, if you didn't get this specific release, you're completely out of luck to play it. When I started this review project in 2016, I splurged to get an original generation Nintendo DS and a DS capture card for explicit recording of this game, so I could review the penultimate version of it. As the extras it comes with, yeah, they're worth it. Though, unfortunately, the game doesn't have everything the Japanese version did, as the Japanese version of Twin Leaders had a 8-bit BGM version of Rockman Stream's opening theme, Be Somewhere, which I've gone squee over before as that being the best musical theme the .exe side of the timeline has gotten. When I learned that was the case, considering the comparatively awful theme for the English version, I was just disappointed. The first of the extras it comes with is 2 chips, called Twin Leaders and Lord of Chaos, which are exclusive to this version, though they can be acquired in the GBA version via GameShark chip sheeting. In Twin Leaders, however, you can grab them immediately from the number trader. Second, and most significantly, is Base Cross. If you're one of those not familiar with base cross, or forte cross as it's called in Japan, it's a pair of colored forms of Megaman, one gold, one silver, representative of his fusion with the ultimate NetNavi, and they together are considered to be one of the 3 most powerful Megaman forms within the frameworks of the games. Though for the record, I count the Beast Crosses from Battle Network 6 as just further augmented versions of Gregor and Falzer Crosses, and part of their respective power sets of the Beast Outs, as it makes it easier to quantify them. And obviously Juka style from Rockman Beast is not on the list, since that's an anime-only form, despite how awesome its one battle of showcase was. But yeah, Base Cross makes getting not only the GBA versions, but the DS1 as well, so worth it, as it is just that awesome. The only downside is to get it in Double Team, you need to complete the GBA version before you slide it into the GBA port on the system. However, that limitation was removed for the Nintendo eShop re-releases of Battle Network 5, so we presume will also be part of the Legacy Collection. Capcom having restored the game data originally in the GBA games for Base Cross to make it automatically accessible and ready for use, alongside all the add-ons to the game made possible by the Battle Chip Gate and e-reader card items that were never made available to the American audience. This is because in Japan, if you went to see Rockman.exe's movie, The Program of Light and Darkness, you received an e-reader card that allowed Battle Network 5 players to access Base Cross, aka Forte Cross, in the GBA version. By the time those games were released here, well, the Battle Network anime was nearing the end of access and otherwise was no longer being imported. None of the Battle Network e-reader cards were imported, and worse, Capcom removed the form data from the GBA release of the game in localization. Thus, you couldn't even try to access it via a cheat device. So it wasn't accessible for us, period, until Twin Leaders. Aside from the Battle Network games, however, you could also insert Boktai 2, Solar Boy Django, to play as Soul Cross Rockman. But I do not own a copy of that game. Though the most significant advantage of slotting in a completed GBA copy is you could immediately import your chip folder from the GBA version into whichever version you were playing on the DS. And if you kept updating that chip folder with chips you'd collected before, you could then register every chip in the game to the game's library without actually needing to track them down. Hell, if you built those imported chip folders to feature program advances, you could just speed through full registration of the program advance memo to unlock what completion of that does as well. Meaning this right here is my permanent New Game Plus that I always wanted with these games, giving me access to my super awesome battle chip folders from the start without needing to redo from scratch the whole damn chip collection nonsense. Sure, I still need to do it if I want to freely build chip folders with the exclusive chip code sets chips that are solely in the DS version to have better advantages against the extra and final boss stuff, but it removes the grind from grinding, as I can just kill viruses in seconds throughout the game since I can already access the best stuff. You put in your work once and now have fun playing casually. Though this is the caveat for it being the 3rd best game, and for some making it into a 3-way tie for best. All of these bonuses you get from gameplay boosts and the initial work ethic the first time round that makes it more playable on repeated playthroughs. The problem, however, was on initial release, Battle Network 5 was received pretty lukewarmly, and slandered by critics when it got imported. So there was already a stigma against this entry when the DS version eventually got out, so not a lot of retailers even sold it. It took me forever to find a copy after its release, and it's surprising I even tried, as I bought Team Protoman first, again informing my disdain for it, then Team Colonel, and then Double Team simply because I'd watched the movie subbed and wanted to play with Base Cross myself. As established, I have a weakness for form change gimmicks. The thing about Base Cross, though, is you have to completely conquer the GBA version of Battle Network 5 in its entirety to unlock it, which is not an insignificant task in and of itself. Doing so unlocks special base-relevant scenes and encounters that results in you actively seeing a power tier scaling with the character as he actively seeks out the sources of dark power brought into the net by Nebula and the Dark Chips, only distracted from that search by sensing his power in us, and investigating that abnormality. In context of my analysis from previous reviews about the use of, and later abandonment in the games, of actual characterization for the character, Base Cross can be seen as Megaman rescuing what remains of Base's actual soul from the remnants of the power-seeking shell of an existence Base has been reduced to after Battle Network 3. It's great that Twin Leaders tried to do more with such a fan-favorite character. It's just such overtures are not going to top Base's use in Ryo Takemisaki's manga that is still considered the best portrayal of the character to date. Unfortunately, the forms are version-locked. Gold Base Cross is exclusive to playing the Twin Leaders version of Team Proto Man, and Silver Base Cross Team Colonel, and there are differences to both. Gold Base Cross is the power type between the two. While both forms make it so the Buster attack hits every row at the same time instead of one, its charge shot is just a powered-up standard shot, with it hitting a single enemy 3 times in a row. The form gives you 200 more HP up front, and prevents you from flinching. Silver Base Cross, on the other hand, is the speed type, granting Megaman Float Shoes so he's immune to panel effects. His HP increases by 20% across the board, so every HP memory then increases Megaman's hit points by 24 HP instead of the 20 he did before, and the charge shot becomes Hell's Rolling, which does 10 hit points of damage 3 times to a single enemy, and if there's an enemy within 1 panel behind the first enemy it hits, it then does the same amount of damage to them. Both charge shots, of course, increase in power with the attack level of the Buster, maxing out at being capable of dealing 150 per attack after the multi-hit is over, which is damn awesome. And yeah, I consider the silver form the superior of the two for just general play, as it does more to deal damage to more enemies, evade attacks, and encourage learning, or rather, relearning, the mechanics with how the HP scales with the upgrades instead of being given up front. The problem, however, is, as great as Hell's Rolling is, that charge shot doesn't work if there's a hole in the battlefield. A bit of a design flaw since that attack is literally a Kienzan. Our story this time opens with Yuichiro Hikari calling his sons and their friends down to Scilab to show off a new discovery of his on the network relating to the research of his father. But before he can tell anyone what it is, the Dark Chip Syndicate Nebula strikes. Yes, they're actually doing something this time! And that something is attacking Scilab in person, hitting the entire research facility with knockout gas, and Dr. Regal himself barging in and ordering his subordinates to abduct Yuichiro. Seeing Lan and Megaman's friends among the knocked out, but missing Lan as he'd been asked to recover something from Yuichiro's office cubicle so he was out of sight, Regal decides to steal Dex, Mail, and Yai's PETs, and their navies with them. Now, this might seem like an excuse plot non sequitur for him to do so, but you've got to remember that the only reason Regal believes he failed his plans last time is because Megaman intervened in his attempts to take over Duo's asteroid. And Megaman was able to intervene because his friends' navies were able to show up and guard him from an explosion that was intended to kill him. Thus it makes sense for Regal to want them out of the way so they can't pull that 11th hour rescue again. He'd likely have stolen Lan's PET as well had he known where in the labs they were. Regardless, the knockout gas is strong enough that Lan's laid out for literal days, during which Nebula's navies, powered by dark chips, engage in a massive assault on the network, managing to lock at the very least Electopia's server fully under their control, which makes for a very early in the storyline,
the all is lost moment,
as the different districts of the network have been barricaded off. Endoblast Megaman is currently capable of can bring down the dark chip strengthened firewalls. Not helped in this that Lan's practically in a panic. He's been crowned the world's greatest net battler several times over. He and Megaman share the title of King of the Undernet, and he can't even save the people important to him. While not a story thread actively touched upon much in the game, you do see how that knowledge weighs on him. However, when we see the barricades for ourselves, we immediately after get a message asking us to come to Scilab, which is under attack. The main computer system of the facility threatening to be destroyed. Why is a good question, considering Nebula could have raided the center's private network when they had free reign of the facility. However, it is not them that is behind this. It is instead a test being performed by an ally, as we are met once more with Chad and Proto Man and Team Proto Man, or the newly introduced Colonel and Beryl in Team Colonel, who want to recruit Lan into a special group of net operators who are intended to take the fight back to Nebula and free the network from their control. And both ways around, this does make sense. For Chad, while he knows of Lan and Megaman's capabilities personally, he has no idea whether Lan is well enough or in the right mindset to be able to help out. Thus, he would have needed to make sure they were in the shape to do so. Coupled with the need for their operators to remain secret for as long as they can, despite, the net navies they possess being a simple giveaway to their identities, it makes sense for Chad to pull such a feint to get Lan somewhere where their conversation and the subsequent planning would not be overheard by a Nebula plant. For Beryl, it's even simpler. He only knows of Lan by reputation, thus needed to test him regardless of his state of being. When either of the team leaders explain the full plans of their team and operations, including the eventual rescue of Yuichiro, Lan's all up for joining and helping out, as the official combat net operator for the team, which ends up a pretty important title, especially for what is up ahead. For as the respective leader navies destroyed the shield barricade with their swords, we're allowed to see the reason why Nebula was able to claim ownership over regions of the network, entering a full entire net area that has been corrupted by dark power, to the point viruses and dark ship manifestations can be born from just the infected panels. Full Dark Lloids guard, manage, and power these regions, and with control of them, not just any Navi can cross them or even formulate enough resistance to matter. Which is, of course, where we come in, and I introduce the single gameplay element that is unique among all the Battle Network games, Battle Network 5's Liberation Missions. To clear these regions, you and the Navies made available to you throughout the game must fight through the dark panels to the Dark Lloids and delete said Dark Lloid. Each panel in the way there must be liberated, wherein you engage with a set of viruses affecting it, with in-universe Lan being the sole battle operator of all these Navies, because network interference prevents more than one operator being able to work alongside one another. You must win the battle in 3 turns to successfully liberate it. Otherwise, the battling Navi is repelled. On top of that, if you manage to liberate that panel in 1 turn, you then successfully, as a bonus reward, liberate every dark panel that is immediately adjacent to the one you set out to liberate. But you don't have to just rely on normal liberations. Each Navi used in a liberation has a special ability that can assist you in traversing these panels, most of which cost an energy currency called order points. You start with a set amount of order points when beginning a liberation mission, and can earn more at specific spots on the map. For Megaman and your leader Navi, they can use order points to liberate sets of squares equaling the attack range of a long sword and a wide sword respectively, with no increase in difficulty. However, the way you approach a liberation can increase the difficulty you face. If you walk up to a solid set of panels, the battle is a standard 9 versus 9 set of squares. But if you liberate a panel sticking out from others, the enemy battlefield is reduced to 6 squares, basically the equivalent of an automatic area steal. Conversely, if you approach a panel and you're near a dark panel on one of your sides, then the enemy's area increases to 12 squares and yours is reduced to 6 in turn. And worst of them all, if there are dark panels on either side of the Navi, then when you begin the liberation, you're on 6 squares surrounded on both sides, and you have to use the L and R buttons to change the way you're facing to fight them off. Surprisingly, if you specialize in close combat battleships and strategies, and I do, then this last one isn't that difficult as it puts everyone reasonably in the strike distance of a wide blade, long blade, or lance battleship, which actually makes for surprisingly easy one-turn liberations as long as you're not fighting like post-game strength enemies. But as you can tell, one-turn liberations are the goal by which this entire new battle system is built around achieving as it results in the best rewards. You only have so many turns by which to reach the relevant Dark Lloid Navi and delete them before time's up and you're kicked out of the region. And the longer you take, the worse the rewards are in doing so. If you do worse than the goal each mission, you do get a cash reward. But complete the liberation of the area in fewer turns than expected? Well, then that gives you easy access to both the standard and SP versions of said Dark Lloid's Navi chips. Thus, the game is heavily slanted, more so than any other, upon building battleship folders that possess the same chip code or synergistic chip codes, as you want to blitz out the best combo of battle chips in one single turn each time it's possible to achieve a one-turn liberation. Hindered in this is that every time the custom gauge gets full in battle during a liberation mission, the custom window automatically opens. So it's not like you can just use one chip and then rely on each Navi's buster to get you the rest of the way while you dodge attacks. At best, you only have a chance to fire off 1 or 2 charge shots if you try things that way. Sadly though, you are once more only going to get really useful battle chip folders out of the L and S chip codes, and for a second game in a row, the only useful program advance is Life Sword. Made worse in Battle Network 5's case, in that the game makes it so you can only use a given program advance once per battle, so you can't stack uses of Life Sword multiple times in a hope to win. This actually makes the S chip code folder less useful of the two, as the L code chip folder can make use of Wide Blade and Long Blade alongside a sword chip to create that advance. And both Blade battle chips have a base attack power of 150 on their own, which makes them far more useful for general battle blitzing of enemy viruses and navis in the event Life Sword either wasn't available or wasn't enough. Though this is mediated by the fact that the S chip code does have the Mega Chip Super Vulcan and 2 easily accessible program advances. Big Noise, which requires 2 Sonar 3 chips and Shademan's Navi chip, and Wild Bird, which takes 2 Katana 1 chips and the Navi chip of Larkman, aka Swallowman, who is a neutral Darkloid you can find in a special region of the Undernet. So you would think this would make the S code the battle winner this time. It really doesn't. 9 times out of 10, I can get a higher damage potential from the L code chips than I can relying on trying to pull 3 program advances and 3 mega chip combo attacks out of the S code chips. Not help that both Darkloid program advances require use of their SP and DS Navi chips, not their base ones, and you can't get the DS chip easily to have a second Navi chip on hand by which to make that strategy viable before post-game. Made worse in that if you use those program advances, then any strategy that utilized Super Vulcan is somewhat doomed, as you won't be able to also add an attack plus 30 and double point, which are needed to boost the damage output of Super Vulcan to the values it needs to hit, unless you want to reduce the chances you'd be able to perform said program advances, as without the DS chip to sacrifice, even if they're dead draws otherwise, the strategy doesn't work. This is additionally made worse by Base Cross, as the form's one detriment is that it reduces the number of mega chips you can use in a folder by 2, meaning you can only use a ground total of 3 mega chips in a folder if you want base's power. Thus, for S-code folders, you can only rely on either a full power Super Vulcan that requires 3 mega chips and a number sold to really do, or you have to sacrifice use of one of the 2 mega chips you need in the folder to pull off those Navi chip required program advances. You legitimately cannot win. And once more, the L chip codes got you covered on that. In Twin Leaders, you can easily get from the number trader the Navi chip Twin Leaders, which is a enemy area-wide strike of both Protoman and Colonel attacking with their swords that hit an enemy twice for 200 damage each. Meaning, this single mega chip has the same damage and attack radius as Wild Bird's program advance alone, and without the chance that it might miss, which I constantly do with it. The Twin Leader battle chip, as said before, was only available to GBA players of the games through either an e-reader card or by using a GameShark to cheat the chip library. Once more, as I have asserted throughout these reviews, no Battle Network player gives a damn if you cheated the chip library because of that type of bullshit exclusivity. Even more so in Battle Network 5's case, as there actually are battle chips in the game that you can't get from cheating the chip library. You still need to track them down inside of it if you want the best possible battle chip folders. Among those being Anti-Damage and Metagel's Asterix version chips. The former you get from a side quest. The other, I've never actually gotten the Asterix code Metagel, as they're trapped as a chip trader exclusive with a 0.1% drop rate. And the game now saves itself every time you use the chip trader machines, meaning you can't save scum your way to getting the super rare drops like you could in all the previous ones. Speaking of which, I've had comments on Battle Network 3 asking me how I got some of my Asterix chip codes, and that's specifically what I did to get them. But add to stuff like that the availability to then place in a attack plus 30 and any other convenient mega chip you might consider, and the choice on what to build is clear to support playing with base cross. Moreover, the L code does one other major thing S doesn't. It provides far better support for elemental type chips for later sacrifice for soul forms in both versions if you're not just using them in battle. Sure, you're not getting program advances out of them, but combo them with the notable asterisk code chips the game gives out, and you can build things that blitz out almost as much damage per turn as a program advance would. L code folders can use Vulcan 3, which hits for 10 times 7 damage, and if paired with Number Soul can double that damage outright, and add an attack plus 30 for 350 in total. That is almost a life sword in and of itself. Even better is the Tornado Battle Chip, which hits a panel for 20 damage 8 times for a base damage of 160, meaning with just attack plus 30, it can strike for 400 damage with just 2 chips, and it can have its base damage doubled when you're using Gyro Soul. Hell, Gyro Soul's damage doubling works for null element chips as well, and after using Wood Soul so much in the playthrough of Blue Moon I did for footage gathering, I got a lot better at using the Tornado's 2 squares ahead attack radius. There's also the wood element chip Cactus Ball that does 50 damage 4 times for a 200 damage base, and that one can easily be double charged to 400 damage for Tomahawk Soul. The chip Rainy Day does 40 damage, but does an extra attack for every C panel on Megaman's side of the field for a potential damage range of 360 before any other attack boosts. Among them being Toad Soul, which is an automatic attack plus 30 if you're in the Soul for any Aqua chip. Meaning if you're in Toad Soul with a full side of C panels, which Toad Soul can hide from enemies in to avoid damage by the way, making possessing C panels in the first place a standard strategy for using that soul. And Rainy Day's damage range can be up to over 600 when that happens. I don't even use those 2 chips as they can be a bit finicky to play with, and the immediate availability of their damage boosting requires more setup and exclusive use of the Team Kernel version of the game, but do you see why I prefer an L code folder here? It can allow the most soul forms to dish out a super attack without the need to dedicate an entire folder around using that soul, as multiple chips of their element type can just naturally splash in to its use in both versions of the game. And that's not even considering full synchro or the easy access to the Gigachip Lord of Chaos that deals 500 damage on its own before any modifiers. Though speaking of it, full synchro is actually much easier to achieve in this game than Battle Network 4. In part help that it's much easier to build a folder with a Vulcan chip in it, so you could potentially be attacking during a virus's counter window to begin with when using a multi-hit chip. But also helped by the dark hole viruses you end up fighting in liberation missions. On top of the standard dark panels, there are also dark holes that have to be liberated in order to face an area's related Darkloid, which spawn mid-boss viruses of 3 types: Big Brutes, Tin Hawks, and Bladias. All 3 of these enemies telegraph openly when they're about to attack, and that is also the counter window for them. Tin Hawks especially are amazing for getting a full synchro on a Navi, as they can only be attacked when they're in their counter window. Because of this, you can regularly double the power of any multi-hit or high attack power chip to being near the damage potential range of a standard program advance without such as use. Or double up the power of program advances or higher powered Mega and Giga chips to be able to potentially one-shot bigger threats during liberations. Especially uplifting, as said full synchro is what allows you to pull off one-turn liberations that speeds you towards the final boss. These incidents, however, are meant to be used to clear out a Dark Hole's liberation, as when liberating a Dark Hole, you fight not just a virus of said Guardian's type, but also other viruses. And that's made much easier if you're starting out in full synchro. However, you're not incentivized to use that full synchro Navi in this battle, as no matter whether you liberate the Dark Hole in 1 turn or 3, it always blows up every dark panel that's adjacent to it. So most of the time it's better to save the full synchro on the Navi that it got it until the next turn to keep the 1 turn liberation chain going. So to sum up Liberation missions, they introduced a gameplay dynamic that brought together every element of gameplay the game designers had ever put into them, and encouraged players to get better and better at them to beat pre-scripted challenges that provided meaningful gameplay rewards and immediate gratification for doing so. You feel good at having cleared a Liberation mission in as few turns as possible, and if you don't do the best you can, then as long as you clear it, it's possible for you to then replay each stage you can to get better at it as you get better chips and more power-ups for Megaman. Hell, there's incentive to do poorly the first time if only so you get the cash rewards of up to 5,000 zenny each time. I actually recommend players grind Liberation Mission 5 specifically for cash. On top of it being the first to give out that 5,000 zenny for taking 10 plus turns to win, you can get an additional 8,000 zenny from liberating the panels with items in them. Depending how long it takes you to clear, you're guaranteed 13,000 zenny at a faster rate you get it from than either random virus battles or equipping Megaman with the Millions Navi Customizer program, which returns in this game. Hell, the Liberation missions allow you to grind bug frags as well, which can be invaluable. Thus, this becomes the easiest entry in the .exe games to resource grind. And that's before factoring in that Japan had e-reader cards available for this game that just deposited rare chips, bug frags, and zenny into it by default if you managed to pull those cards. As you can probably tell, I sing this game's praises in part because I'm actually really good at it, certain frustrating viruses notwithstanding, as I'd suck at dealing with those no matter what. Hell, I'm actually so good at this game that I actually broke the difficulty of the most difficult Liberation mission, and turned it into one of the easiest missions to clear, despite the uber-buff viruses making one-turn liberations near impossible. Even the guidebook, once more written to much humor by Greg Sepelak, didn't catch the easiest way to clear Mission 9. Do y'all want to know what it is? 'Cause it's hilarious. Liberation Mission 9 is the last of the 3 post-game Liberation missions you have to do to get to the expected post-game boss rush. It being the hardest one, as on top of 2 Darkloids, well, the map looks like this. These boundaries circling it are barrier panels which navis can't traverse, and their existence forces you to take routes that shove you in the worst way possible against the enemy viruses and navis, forcing you to burn your resources faster than you can recover them just to get to items called barrier keys which unlock those panels. Problem is, the first key is guarded by Blizzard Man, and only accessible via a corridor that leaves your navis in striking range of both him and his compatriot Cosmo Man, who will hit you for damage you cannot block unless your defensive navi is standing in their way. The other 2 are at the ends of the side paths that only start to open up after you get one from Blizzard Man, and are also blocked by dark holes, meaning the navi you have, which has the ability to walk over dark panels to infiltrate deep behind enemy lines, can't walk over to where they are, but have to fight all the way into the depths of these paths before the barrier can come down. However, the way to break the map is found exclusively in Team Kernel. Once more, there's a reason why there's no contest in which version is better. And in this case, that happens to be because of Toadman. Toadman has the ability Life Melody, which allows a navi that Toadman sings to the ability to liberate a straight row of 5 panels. How this becomes broken then, and I am straight up baffled that no one I could find has ever done this, is that 5-panel line goes straight through barrier panels. Meaning if you know where the key is beforehand, and there is a panel on your side of a barrier that is within a straight line of that key, you can use the Life Melody Liberation line to completely bypass and bring down the maze. Once the barriers are shut down, almost every dark hole in the area is left exposed, allowing you to quickly liberate them and leave the Darkloid navis unprepared to face off against a navi team that's far better off than they would have been otherwise. It makes the most difficult to traverse mission a cakewalk to clear, and honestly, I just could not find anyone else who's cleared this stage that way. Like, it's plausible just people playing the game did find it and kept it themselves as a neat feat, and I could easily have missed someone doing so, But I did check around. I checked a bunch of video Let's Plays of the game. I checked GameFAQs' guides. I checked the forums on GameFAQs. I checked the forums of basically any forum that in any way tangentially mentioned this game. And yeah, there's a few other shortcuts people tried to implement for Team Protoman, but kernel players where this is easily doable, I saw were surprisingly oblivious to this. Primarily because they're too focused on precise placement of one-turn liberations to realize the waiting potential of Gekara.exe over here. Anyways, each liberation mission does teach you their mechanics in intuitive ways to encourage mastering their mechanics of use, explaining why we don't have a full team yet by which to blitz the enemy. Too much too fast can mean that the mechanics end up going unlearned. Regardless, the big Dark Lloyd boss of the first liberation mission is Blizzard Man, and he's one of the two Dark Lloyds with an elemental weakness this game, so you can't depend on exploiting such a weakness for bonus damage most of the time. Not that you're supposed to have elect element chips yet at this point to do critical damage on him, unless you're New Game Plusing it, but Blizzard Man is never really hard. With this we've liberated AC/DC from Nebula's control, but we've still got a long way to go before we can confront Regal in person. Anyways, with the rest of Lan's friends having now recovered from being gassed, well, they're trying to keep their minds off of the state of their navies. Thus it suggested that they take a beach trip. But for some reason, that trip takes them out to the otherwise abandoned island of Oran, that the story says is 2 hours travel off the coast of the country. Which actually brings up a few notable story plot holes. Namely that the game has you come back to this freaking island a lot. Lots of events and people necessitate you return to Oran in very dire straits. So when you don't have the time to lose on something amidst a crisis, you end up needing to suddenly drop everything and chart a 2-hour trip to an island to find whatever you need to do, then get back on the boat and travel back to the mainland, which is another 2 hours lost, before you can then progress on something else. Yeah, the game does that transit instantly, but in-universe, especially with how easy it is to transit to locations via cyberspace, it's a bit silly. Made more laughable in that the Oran area jack-in points are actually the best to use as a transit hub when you're trying to traverse the larger network areas for a fair portion of the game. Battle Network 5's network is divided into AC/DC, Oran, Scilab, End, and Undernet areas, and while you eventually get access to each region from a region-specific homepage, it's actually very deep into the game before they open you up to faster travel like that. Meaning jacking in at Oran, which is canonically a 2-hour trip there, is the fastest and simplest way to get where you need to go online. That doesn't even change much in the post-game, when you hit up every network area to track down each Navi's ghost data. It is in fact recommended you start your hunts in Oran, as it's fastest to go to Oran, hit the ones in AC/DC's net, jack out, change routes to a second Oran path that leads to the Scilab ghost Navis, jack out, and then take the third path to head into the End area and Undernet. Jack out, and then repeat from the top to then go fight the random encounter ghosts. It actually does cut down game travel time immensely to go about doing it that way. Regardless, Lan being asked to keep his anti-Nebula agent status on the down low ends up messing with his time off with his friends. Which once more, with how the Access anime aired before this, I can't help but think there was some back adaptation to its plot points, depending on how much Battle Network 5's development team were aware of what Access was doing. However, if you're playing the Twin Leaders version of the game, you also get access to an additional gameplay system, the Party Battle System. This is another additional gameplay mechanic that was part of the GBA versions of Battle Network 5, which we could not access. You'll remember my explanation of the Battleship Gate before, right? How it allowed Battle Network 4 players to operate Megaman like he was in the anime, as a self-functioning AI you sent battleships to? Well, Battle Network 5 took that a bit farther. By inserting the teammate-associated battleship, you could actually swap which net navi you were using in battle, tagging out Megaman so he was more fresh for fights or to just have fun playing as a different navi. The party battle system in Twin Leaders was thus a re-implementation of that expansion as additional core content to make it playable by those who didn't possess the Battleship Gate, primarily because the Nintendo DS was incompatible with all of the Game Boy Advance's periphery items. This is also why Base Cross was a standard unlockable for anyone that slotted in a Battle Network 5 cartridge into Twin Leaders, as the DS couldn't connect to and use the e-reader cards. Well, that and the e-reader card that unlocked Base Cross was an exclusive promotional card only originally accessible by going to see the movie when said film was in theaters. And while that film set a box office record for its release week, you really shouldn't have chase cards or accessories be exclusive to going to see a movie. Anyways, how the system was implemented in Twin Leaders was via the use of the touchscreen. Tap the Navi you want to battle with, and they swap in, being just as playable as the version you use in Liberation missions, which on top of allowing Megaman backup at any time, also allowed you to learn those specific Navi's gameplay mechanics outside of battle as needed. The PBS Navis could also have their stats and abilities augmented through the use of exclusive customizer programs, of particular note being Party Support, where the Navi equipped with the program would appear on screen during specific activation windows and assist the active Navi in battle. Made even better, that if you change Navis when the Navi on the field is in full Synchro, then before the Navis trade places, they can trigger a special team attack that acts the same as a Navi program advance from the earlier games. In specific, if Megaman is in full Synchro and you swap him with Protoman or vice versa, then it can trigger their tried and true double hero team attack, making it so that attack then becomes featured in 5 of the 6 mainline Battle Network games. Because of that, I usually left the Battle Support program on Protoman and Colonel, as even when Double Hero and Colonel's equivalent team attack wasn't triggering, then they'd still dive in at the beginning of every turn to do additional damage. Each pretty much acts as a free use of a Navi chip, and with the reduction of available Mega Chips due to Base Cross and the fact it resets every turn with them, it makes it much faster to get high Buster rankings with which to more quickly collect the chips in-game. Most of the time. Not every party Navi has the most useful abilities, though. Hell, some can actually interfere with gameplay. When I put the support program on Nightman, who's showing up soon, it caused him to block every hit I would have taken, and thus I'd take no damage. But often that block would prevent me from doing anything. So I got stuck in a cycle where I couldn't do anything when I needed to, and thus my Buster rating went down. It's overall just better to rely on that program for just additional attacks or peripheral support, and not replacing your defensive strategies where all you really need is anti-damage and invisible battle chips. Still, the party battle system isn't usable with everything. Any major story event shuts the thing down to preserve the original difficulty curve of the game. Its biggest use is just removing the grind from the game's mandatory grind, and once more, that's the big bonus of playing the Twin Leaders version. The grind in the Battle Network games has long been its largest criticism, and yet here they've done as much as they reasonably could to remove that hindrance. With this in hand, Lan and Megaman are instructed to check out the repairs to AC/DC's network in order to prepare for their next operation in the Oran area, and then again amidst Lan and friends getting to having fun on the island. The team leader calling the pair once more to actually jack into the Oran network to see what the defenses of the controlled area is like. Unfortunately, the Oran's contested area is now guarded by a set of digital miniguns, and neither available Navi has the defense stats on them to withstand suppressing fire, thus forcing them to retreat. This ends up the cycle repeated for each recruitment in the game. There's some new obstacle guarding the next encroaching field where a liberation mission takes place, requiring the recruitment of another operator and Navi to bolster the forces and get past it. In this case, they need a defensive Navi. And sure enough, one makes its appearance from the fold of an enemy faction. For as Lan, at least after an email that returns Megaman's Navi customizer to us, returns to having fun with his friends as there's nothing that can be done on the mission front right now, Dex decides that the group of 4 should go and explore an abandoned mine that is also situated on the island. If there's a mine on this island, then shouldn't that logically mean that there's a small village and town that should have been here to provide services to those working in the mine? Like food, rest, accommodations, toiletries, a bathhouse. That happens with any place that provides resources. Stuff like that makes itself available to support what is supplied. Take a look at all the towns that sprung up around purported gold, silver, copper, and iron veins. Like, if this mine was just on an isolated peninsula of the country, then that would make sense for why the best way to get here would be by boat, and why so many people would end up here throughout the game. But if this is truly isolated on an empty, abandoned island, then there's a lot of questions about what's here. But as you'd expect, Lan's friends drop into the depths of the mine as a sinkhole opens up, requiring Lan enter the mine to try and rescue them. Make sure you have 1,000 zenny though, as you need to go online at a specific jack-in point outside the mine to get a key from an old navvy that'll let you in past the security doors installed specifically to keep people out. But unfortunately, someone else seems to have bought that same key, as when you dive deeper underground, the mine starts to rumble. Rocks begin to fall on decks Yai and Mail, and eventually we find a giant excavating tool coming down right atop their heads, controlled by Princess Pride and Team Colonel, and Tesla Magnets, daughter of Gauss Magnets, in Team Protoman, with both bearing connection to Battle Network 2's story and the organization Gospel. Though to say Pride is in control is a bit of a misnomer, the game seeming to take a cue from the anime once again, in having Nightman actually going on a rampage, just like in the second episode of the anime that Pride and Nightman appeared in. And to contrast Pride as well against her prior characterization in the games, she's panicked about Nightman losing control. It's said in this case to be because of magnetometal, which is abundant in this mine, which Pride was working on her own to recover in another attempt to help her country through the disaster their local economy is suffering. She's not out to harm anyone here, and attempting her own redemption and reformation for her actions with Gospel by taking on this task herself, but didn't expect the magnetometal to mess Nightman up so much that he can't even respond to her. Thus, to help his friends and to keep Pride from having another crime on her record, they have to dive into the drill system to stop Nightman. Team Protoman's version of this is less relatable. After the events of Battle Network 2, with Gauss going to prison for air terrorism, Tesla was forced to take over her father's company, and repairing the PR nightmare Gauss left her with even by a simple association to him has left her beyond stressed. With the company near collapse from its now negative reputation, Tesla was left alone to recover the same magnetometal for their research division, and is going a bit hog wild to take out her frustrations. And yes, she knows who Lan is, so if Lan wants to save his friends, he can do it himself and face her and Magnet Man. Tesla as a character is testy, and not help that stream made her a recurring boss antagonist for an extended stretch of its story. This makes sense in how the .exe anime had burned through most of its available antagonists already, and the games hadn't exactly been supplying a lot of new antagonists to make use of. Thus, Stream decided to mix things up, and, thanks to most of the Battle Network 3 enemy operators not having been used, Tesla formed Neo World 3 using them as her subordinates. Her doing this also makes sense in universe due to her dad's obsession with Dr. Wily clearly leaking over onto her, and wanting to one-up her dad's job by succeeding where he and Wily failed with her and her subordinates' own schemes. And while that has some valid reasoning behind it, unfortunately a lot of episodes relating to Tesla and Neo World 3 were not well executed. If you were watching my coverage of the Rockman.exe anime before I had to take some of those videos down, then you know whom among the writing staff are the ones with suspect quality by now, so I'll leave that alone. Suffice it to say, while Pride is a breath of fresh air with how she's presented and appeals to anyone who saw her in the anime, Tesla is an acquired taste on both sides of the media. The most she honestly has going for her being her slow burn romance with the character Charlie, who we will meet later. To fight Nightman and Magnet Man, however, we need to dive through the drill computer, which after you talk to a Mr. Program to give you a subprogram, involves literally smashing rocks to traverse the internal conveyors of the drill computer's maps. Some rocks are so hard, however, that it'll take multiple hits, and depending on where you are, you might not have the time to break them, particularly if you and the rock are both on conveyors. So when that happens, you just need to take a chance to dodge onto adjacent platforms to get around. With each section of the drill computer cleared, the drill spins slower, allowing Lan's friends more of a chance to breathe, until finally we can confront the Navi at the end. Magnet Man is of course the easier of the two, especially since I'm New Game Plus with wood elemental chips in my folder. If you've played or remember the review of Battle Network 2, Magnet Man plays the same as from there, though the setup of the magnet panels around him is different than what BN2 pulled. Nightman is much the same for that matter, for the most part, on echoing how the character worked in Battle Network 2, only updated visually a bit more in regards to his mechanics. He still spends most of his battle in an invincible state, but he can't attack during it. And it's much better to try tracking his invincibility frames here than it was before. His attacks remain straightforward, either throwing his royal wrecking ball at you, or dropping bricks that crack panels. Either way though, when you win, Lan's friends are freed. And having seen the power these navies have in their defensive stats, Lan asks if their operators want to help take the fight to Nebula. Pride, in apology for what happened before, wholeheartedly agrees. Tesla, though, takes some convincing and enticing in the form of having something to vent her stress against, since Nebula's not made her job or salvaging Gauss's mess any easier. Either way, the Navi from this incident becomes the defense-statted member of the team, and uses said skills to guard the other Navis from the artillery fire long enough for the others to destroy the encampments, and beginning the next liberation mission. Though heading the control of this area is our old nemesis, Shademan, revived from the dead thanks to the power of Dark Aura once more. Because of course the Dracula equivalent would come back from the dead. Just being atomized by the piledriver last game really was not enough. Here is where we get another upgrade to play in Team Leaders though, the Transfer Party or TP chip. This special chip allows you to convert one party Navi into its equivalent in the other game. Here it can be used to change Protoman into Colonel, or more usefully, Magnet Man into Nightman. This is dead useful when playing Liberation missions because, well, Magnet Man sucks at his assigned role. His Magnet Barrier, which protects party members close to him, requires an order point to use, meaning every time you use it, you have fewer order points to spend on any other ability. Nightman, by comparison, has his invincible defensive ability as a built-in, cost-free skill that protects him and those around him from overworld map attacks. In battle, not so much, but this kind of thing is why the TP chip was implemented. Now, admittedly, you have a very small supply of the TP chips, so it's not like you can do this for all the team party members, and you can only trade them out once per turn. But if you're playing the Protoman version and have to suffer the complete uselessness of two of the battle party members, now you have the option of trading them out. This map also introduces the Tin Hawk viruses, which can traverse all the dark panels rapidly to strike our navies on the overworld and deplete our health without getting into a battle. Combo this with Shademan bearing the same ability by fading in and out of the shadows, and it makes sense why a defensive Navi would be needed. So the strat for this field is to keep the group of Navis close, while step-by-step clearing a path to Shademan. The Tin Hawks stick around for later maps, but Shademan is the real problem here. Much like Magnet Man and Nightman, however, Shademan has nothing new to his arsenal. If you learned his mechanics during the 6 playthroughs of Battle Network 4, where you had to fight him a total of, 24 times? He's no major challenge, with a defensive Navi and his operator subsequently staying on with the team to fight Nebula, and the camaraderie formed, subsequently reviving Double Soul for the game, with Megaman's far easier acquisition of Magnet Soul in Team Protoman and Night Soul in Colonel. Time passes, and on the following day, as the kids are looking for something to do while Lan's on standby, we get accosted by one of two suspicious characters. Charlie, operator of Gyroman, and Dark Miyabi, the long mysterious operator of our long-time recurring ninja foil, Shadow Man. Both insult Megaman and Lan's capabilities as operators, challenging the brothers to face off against them inside the AC/DC Squirrel. Stop laughing! And several squares later, where, if you take all the wrong paths you can collect a bunch of items, you get to confront their respective navies. In Team Colonel, Megaman and Lan immediately realizing the danger they're in by seeing their off and on again contracted assassin foe. Team Protoman with Gyroman, not so much. In part because much of Charlie's persona comes off as kind of arrogant and risk-taking. In both versions, though, the point behind their challenge is that Megaman's too slow to really be able to deal with them. Gyroman because he can change into a nimble helicopter, and Shadowman because, well, ninja. To make matters worse, they're not the only one that they're accosting, but that's for later. Before that, Higsby's chip shop is open once again, with a number of good chips to grab, including everything in the number trader. But also behind the shop is an odd man with an odd chip for sale. Specifically, a dark chip. Unlike last game where Megaman's only interaction with a dark chip is the data for one they obtain digitally, In this game, that mechanic has been completely removed, making it so the only way to use a dark chip is for you to find it in the wild and then put it in the folder. No temptation to the dark side nonsense this time, meaning will players once more have the option to use them? For the rest of us who don't want to damage Mega Man's HP pool, we can just ignore them. Bar one aspect of play I'll discuss later, but I don't use that either. Regardless, you're called to war around again to make sure the recently liberated region is secure from Nebula forces, which it isn't. 6 Nebula agents are scattered throughout its 3 regions and are looking for a fight, requiring their deletion to resecure the area. With that done, your mission's updated to check up on the state of Scilab's network areas, which are themselves barricaded by a dark chip-powered row of clouds, which once more the present Navis can't traverse. Unfortunately, no one thinks about contacting the nimble Navied operators to see if they might want help with the challenge, and there's a reason for that. Namely, they're already under contract. After Land takes a nap, your defensive Navi operator calls you in a panic back to Oran, Gyroman/Shadowman having attacked and defeated them, and they need help recovering the programs that make their Navis run. On the island, however, you once more can come across Mr. Famous and his newest Navi, Gridman. I have literally been waiting since I began these reviews to make that joke. Yes, they were planned as early as 2016. Only made easier by the fact that Gridman's seen a revival in recent years as a damn good anime from Studio Trigger. Unfortunately, it is not that Gridman. Gridman is instead a football-based Navi designed after a linebacker, with him being able to make like Shadowman and clone himself a full team. The Navi was actually a contest submission for a .exe verse original Navi, and the one that ultimately won that contest due to how the original artist incorporated the design of a football into the Navi's body. In Japan, though, the Navi is officially named Footman, because the name Gridman is trademarked by Subaraya for the aforereferenced digital AI Ultra superhero. No such trademark existed at the time in Western markets. Thus why the character could be renamed such without issue. But yeah, main quest. Each of the defensive Navi's core programs can be found by re-entering the drill computer and fighting through them once again to grab the program from where you previously turned off the damn things. It's just a fetch quest. Made both easy and yet frustrating by how the rock system in each drill computer is turned off. So it is easier to traverse again, but frustrating in that the drill crusher is in the deepest depths of the Oran Mine's maze, and it always takes a few long minutes to get down here, and yet the game keeps insisting on doing so. Worse, it's all a distraction. The Speed Navi actually having gone over to Scilab to bug your team leader, who claims to have fought them off solo. Before we can grill them more on that, though, our next Darkloid enemy, Cloudman, has made his own bid to retake Oran, drenching the Oran net with more clouds. Fortunately, a helpful Mr. Program equips Megaman with a vacuum program, whose tank can suck up these digital clouds and clear access to the squares they were holding hostage. The downside is the tank of the vacuum program can only hold about 10 white clouds, and the clouds come in a few different densities. White and gold clouds 1, gray clouds the equivalent of 3 whites, and black clouds the equivalent of 5. While you can talk to Mr. Programs to empty the tank to push progression, well, there's a lot of clouds. So keep to clearing just the ones that matter to getting you out of your path, and not every single one out there. After clearing both Oran Nets 1 and 2, you then have to do the same in Scilab as the Speed Navi taunts you once more about the slow pace you work at. And we get it, guys! Megaman's not specialized for just speed, but is a jack-of-all-trades type net Navi. Scilab, though, is the difficult part in all this. The 2 areas you cleared in Oran, just a training course for the real challenge of the clouds, as unless you take a specific path in clearing the clouds, you won't be able to traverse them as the tank just fills up too fast, without easy access to Mr. Programs this time around. Scilab 2 is the worst at this, the path having Mr. Programs, but none of them can empty the entire tank, only empty just enough clouds to get you to the next Mr. Program in the chain. If you take the wrong route, then you have to leave the area and come back to reset the entire puzzle. More than the others, this drove me batty because the Speed Navi's the only one of the cast that doesn't have a proper related region you go to for their recruitment that ties in any way to their story. The support Navis at the end, I'll get to later, but while there's no overworld location that's dedicated to them, the region they want to get into and why serves as their story region and at least is properly touched on. Here, the Speed Navi's just continuing a challenge arc and the Nebula agents just making it worse for us independently of one another. Unless we want to count the squirrel in this, and I frankly don't. Eventually we face off with Gyroman and Shadowman in the rear side of Scilab, them having no problems with the clouds like we did, as they can either walk or fly over them without issue. Shadowman, as you'd expect from a returning Navi, has all the same stuff we'd seen from him before. It's just his general ninja-ness that's going to screw with you. Gyroman, on the other hand, is a wind elemental Navi that uses his transformation skill to his advantage, flying up out of your range to hit, very often, to drop bombs on you, throw his propellers around the map, and unleash a tornado arm that hits a 3-square line. And worse, the farther back from that tornado you are, the more it hurts. With their defeat, however, we finally learn who contracted them to fight us, and that person's name is our team leader, Chod and/or Barrel. The point of these challenges was to show the kinds of power we could be confronted by, which we would need to overcome. And with the Speed Navis bested, they're now joining up with us, showing their noble skill by vaulting over the clouds and destroying the dark ship powering them. This allows us to face Cloudman, permitting the introduction of the barrier panels I already spoiled existed when I talked about Liberation Mission 9. Fortunately, both Gyroman and Shadowman can walk on normal unoccupied panels, meaning they can't get past dark holes or panels occupied by the mid-boss enemies, making it easier to get to the barrier keys that disable the blocks in the road, or set up circumstances to shorten or bypass our way through everything. Their order point abilities are Bomb Liberation for Gyroman, which allows him to auto-liberate a dark panel he's flying over, and Sneak Attack for Shadowman, allowing him to backstab any boss-class enemy on the field for massive damage. Both of these characters take the most advantage out of getting one-turn liberations, as when they sneak past enemy lines, they can open up easier paths of traversal than others would, as long as you know what you're doing. Most of the time, it's just smart to have them focus on speeding for the barrier keys to bring those down, while the rest of the team works their way through the dark holes, while assisting the rest by opening up traversal paths where plausible. Cloudman, once more for me, is both not a challenge, and yet also an annoyance, due to his propensity to hide behind all his clouds in battle, said clouds blocking most open attacks until they're destroyed by Buster Fire, and not help that he doesn't just hide behind the clouds, but inside them. As while him hugging the back row makes him an open target to be pierced by the bamboo chip or be hit by boomerangs, when he hides in his clouds, he can end up anywhere on the map. His annoyance is completed with his Elect Storm attack, as while it can do a lot of damage, is more slow than anything, but can distract you from getting Cloudman to reveal himself to finally attack him, which during a liberation mission can do the worst thing possible to you, force you to waste valuable time between the turns, that can lead you to a default loss against him if not careful. But while the liberation mission is successful and the Hikari brothers have taken the need for speed and precision to heart, which earns them Gyro Soul and Shadow Soul respectively, Cloudman is still not done, assaulting the group one last time, and abducting Megaman into Nebula's grasp. With Megaman now in Nebula's hands, he is subsequently experimented on by Nebula's other agents, leading to the return of Megaman's walk on the dark side.
お前はダークロックマン。僕はロックマンに最も惨めな死。つまりネット君の手でデリートされるという死を与えるつもりだった。
No, not him. Though we'll talk about him eventually. Hopefully. I'm still hoping I can actually keep the anime reviews up. Appropriately, Lan's not happy about losing his brother again, both team leaders being a bit brisk about the need to continue the mission. With Barrel, this makes sense. There's no personal connection there, and he's military, meaning he's had to learn to accept the loss of fellow soldiers, thus is desensitized to it. Chod, not so much. He's seen firsthand the Hikari's connection. Thus, while he's become a far better person than he was, well, the way the story presents such isn't the best, even though he is right in these circumstances that they need Lan, and as long as Lan can stay focused on the tasks at hand, they will inevitably be able to rescue everyone Nebula's stolen from him. And I think it punctuates the development their relationship as friends and rivals has gone through amidst the games, that the temporary Navi Chod gives him that will allow Lan to continue fighting Nebula is Proto-Man himself. Chod is entrusting his own Navi to Lan because he has that much faith in Lan as an operator to do right by him. A context that isn't quite the same, nor as strong, by Beryl doing the same in lending Lan Colonel. Because let's face it, we've built a rapport and story dynamic with Chod over the years that Beryl just can't match with appearing for the first time in this game. It's one of the few things Team Proto-Man has as a game over Team Colonel, the continuing evolution of these two as characters. The downside of being lent the leader Navi for this chapter of the game, however, is you cannot collect any power-up items for Megaman until Megaman is back, meaning there's a fair amount of backtracking made necessary later on. At the very least, however, you can get the anti-damage asterisk chips now, as the harbor area next to this game's version of Scilab now opens, within which a kid behind a warehouse challenges you to a game of digital hide-and-seek. Find him in every place his clues lead you to, and anti-damage is yours. The current mission, though, requires the team open up the end area, which Scilab managed to isolate with a security key we need to recover from the depths of the Scilab areas. This allows us to get a bit of experience using the leader Navis in normal battles, or would if we hadn't already been doing so in the Twin Leaders version, before we enter the end area and find Megaman taken over by a Dark Soul, and backed up by a lot of Nebula Navis. So, yeah, instead of keeping the Category Queen chess piece off the board, Nebula's tried to weaponize him against us. And with the reinforcements, we're forced to retreat for now. We need someone with a lot more power to get through them all. That realization subsequently clues the team into a way to resolve this. There's a new Navi program being worked on called the Booster System, which can increase computing power immensely, and it's going up on auction to the highest bidder soon. Unfortunately, something like that would also be an open target for Nebula to try and steal, meaning we have to infiltrate the ship the showcase is taking place on, the Queen Bohemia. Sadly, we don't have an invitation. I doubt we could afford the Rhapsody.
Just a poor boy, nobody loves me.
But fortunately, we know a company CEO and/or royal princess that would have gotten an invitation to the event, allowing us to get on board. The ship showcases a group of eccentric characters, ultimately invoking the feeling of a locked-door mystery style of tale, with you eventually needing to ferret out the Nebula agent amidst the assembled characters, and Lan being the detective in this case of whodunit in stealing the booster system. Which thus once more invokes something I often have needed to reiterate in my reviews of the anime. Lan Hikari! Not good at academics, but not an idiot. Though even the Nebula agent ends up a feint, him being unmasked and yet not being behind the booster system's theft. The actual thief? Our power-type Navi recruits. Firefox and his Navi Napalm Man in Proto-Man, and Dingo and his Navi Tomahawk Man in Team Colonel. Both of them after the booster system for differing reasons. For Firefox, he is a fireworks maker both on and offline, and with the booster system he plans to improve the power of his digital fireworks displays to help his struggling business. And before you ask, yes, Firefox's English localized name is a reference to the web browser. Mozilla Firefox was originally created as an alternative to the awfulness of Internet Explorer, now Microsoft Edge, in 2002. And even by the time this game released in the Americas in 2005, Firefox the web browser was overtaking Internet Explorer in popular use. Hell, I was using Firefox by then. His Japanese name, Nenji Rokushakudama, however, is an allusion to his job as a fireworks maker and fireworks in general, a shakudama being a type of large mortar firework. Dingo, on the other hand, has far different motivations. His home, a small village, was devastated by the corporate antics of those behind the development of the booster system. his people displaced by said company going eminent domain on their asses, just so the company could build a resort town in its place. Dingo thus intended to sabotage the use and sale of the booster system, as said project was one of their largest money sinks. If they get further financial backing to make more, his people were worried even more people would end up displaced like he was. So, Dingo acted to intervene. I'd say that doesn't exactly happen, but I've seen the bullshit corporate America polls, and I've been watching Defunctland and Yesterworld Entertainment's YouTube videos on the rise and fall of amusement parks and how certain big business types and land barons screw over homeowners. And on top of that, tank both successful business ventures and the economies around them for their own personal gain. Which is unfortunately true across the spectrum of capitalism, so yeah, not got much to complain about with Dingo's motivations. Unfortunately, this brings us to two of the irritants of the Twin Leaders versions. Namely, the development team for the DS release decided to extend 2 of the external network maps from 3 areas to 4, making Greg Seplak's guidebook and extensive maps basically worthless for assisting in navigation of these areas. The ship computer especially irritating in this because it's split between an above water section and a below water section that forces upon you a breath mechanic. Once you run out of breath, your HP stops getting hit unless you make like Sonic the Hedgehog and find a spot of bubbles to restore your air. Which doesn't make sense. These are AI programs. They don't breathe. I generally hate it whenever they do this, as it's just damn irritating. I mean, yeah, it's only the second time they've really done it, the first being Aquaman's storyline in Battle Network 4, but it's still not enjoyable. But as much as I'd hate to defend how Aquaman's side story was handled, at least it didn't have a huge number of obstacles. In the ship computer, you have the constant complications of both whirlpools that sap your air, and jet streams that push you around the map. Sure, some of the jet streams are supposed to be used to jump you from certain paths to others to get exclusive mystery data crystals, some of which contain the keys to get farther into the maps, but others are obstacles that prevent you from getting across them, and it's not easy at all to fight against the flow of the jet stream, in part as you need to make sure as to be pressing the directional controls directly against the flow of them to be able to stay in place. If you're off for even a microsecond imposing them, which trust me, you often will be, then you're going to be blown away, and there are several of these jet streams that double themselves up so they affect 2 rows of a map, block off a section of a path that zigs back and forth so you have to get past those same jet streams multiple times, and you have to get past this curving path of jet streams to actually progress to fighting the Power Navi. And make worse, once you get Megaman back, you have to come back here again, because not only are there HP memories to buff his stats here, but the first expansion memory for the Navi Customizer that is mandatory to survive deeper in the game. Short of the Undernet and Nebula areas in the game, where at the very least they're always supposed to be hard, the ship computer is the absolute worst to work your way through because of the mandatory mechanics that never go away. I may hate going to do the things we're forced to in the drill computers, but that's more because of the long trip it even takes to get to them and back from them. As at the very least when you go through them all, the rock lines have been turned off and removed, so the only thing you have to deal with is the virus battles. The same with the gargoyle computer we'll be dealing with next. Clear the traps and puzzles and they stay shut down. Not so much here. Worse in my mind, you all know how Mega Man enemy stages tend to follow a thematic pattern. Case in point, the area you encountered Beastman and Plantman in during Battle Network 3. They match the character's theme. Bubbleman's chase tied into the area of the network relating to the beach network. Beach, water. Flame Man found in a section of the internet has been equated to a Navi hell. Thus a Navi made from the fires of hell, you got your thematic match. Sure, not every Navi perfectly matches this. Some of these certainly stretch to match a theme or puzzle. However, the entire ship encounter seems to have the same problem as Battle Network 4's varied Navi side story encounters. They don't match the region at all they occur in, even from the respect of their team roles. As little as Nightman and Magnet-Man match the mine as workers for the mine, the magneto-metal contents of the mine and the role it plays in operative labor more allowed for flexibility in stage typing, especially in a sense that some mine workers have been known to become temporarily unbalanced in the events a pocket of natural gas or some other contaminant was broken open. But a Firebomber Navi and an axe-wielding tribal Navi, that doesn't match well with boat, now does it? Though Napalm Man in and of itself being used has its own questions about it. Namely from the fact that the character was previously seen in Battle Network 2 as a secret World 3 Navi that was used as a post-game boss. Does this mean that Firefox was a previous member of World 3 before the organization appeared to go defunct? Never answered, at least in the video games. In the anime, there is a whole arc which explains that, where Firefox actually stumbles across Asteroid Napalm Man, long story, not relevant for now, and bonds with him so that instead of becoming a rampaging threat to humanity, he's reformed and fights for the world and person he comes to care for. It's a pretty good tale, too, especially since the anime's version of the character was previously seen as being part of some Dark Nation faction that never really got expansion on before they got deleted. As a consequence, though, Napalm Man once more fights like he did in Battle Network 2, albeit with a far softer difficulty curve as we're not in the post-game, and showing his allegiance changed by relying a bit more on firebomb tactics to complement his Vulcan arms. But if you've slotted in any of the myriad water chips you can grab from the ship computer, he's no trouble at all. Tomahawk Man is a bit trickier, not just because you've not really had a chance to get many fire chips in this game, and the fire element not being prevalent in Battle Network 5 to begin with, and really the only functional one for an L or S code chip folder being Bulk Bomb L or Hotbody 3S. And Bulk Bomb's worthless in L code because it requires being shot with another fire chip to set it off, which does not exist in the folder type. Kinda reminds me of the Sinnoh region in a way, where in Pokemon Generation 4, if you wanted a fire Pokemon, you were stuck with either the Fire Starter or Ponyta until very late in the game. But yeah, that lack of overt weaknesses is why Tomahawk Man is a badass in this game. The totem in his back row helps that, granting him invulnerability, healing, or ranged meter attacks if you're not shooting the thing regularly to disable it. He can throw tomahawks for ranged attacks, and his tomahawk swing hits with the range of a life sword. Add to that he also heals while on grass panels, and he is a damn effective tank. As proven after you defeat these Navis, and their operators agree to work off their crime by joining the team, while their crime is publicly blamed on the actual terrorist in their midst. I say they're getting away with it, but helping liberate the world from the control of a dark syndicate, yeah, it's going to end up being time served. Thus we return to the end area, with Napalm Man and Tomahawk Man making quick work of the Nebula agents guarding the entrance, and allowing access to the main field, and its many dark panels. Too many to economically be able to obliterate them all. Fortunately, that's where Napalm Man and Tomahawk Man's special abilities come in. Their use of order points blowing up large masses of panels per use, at the cost of destroying any items hidden in those panels with exception to barrier keys. Napalm Man's napalm ability exploding out in a Foursquare long cross as if he were Sachiel from Evangelion. I am only just now realizing there's actually some design similarities, so maybe that was a deliberate homage. While Tomahawk Man's Tomahawk Swing once more hits as many panels as a Life Sword, meaning there's always going to be a trade-off. While Tomahawk Man's attacks only penetrate half as deep as Napalm Man's, it consequently allows for more safe liberations with the other Navis as they're not having to deal with the enemies gaining more spaces to play with, more tougher viruses per encounter, or boxing a Team Navi in on both sides, which are the consequences of Napalm Man by comparison. However, as I've said, if you've built your folder correctly to actually take advantage of enemies being on both sides of you, it actually makes one-turn liberations far easier to pull off, making it so you have safely burst open regions by which to infiltrate faster, deeper. Tomahawk Man's the safe option to keep hacking away at the blockades, while Napalm Man opens a path through the enemy that is high risk, high reward. Made no better on this map specifically because Megaman is in enemy hands, meaning you can't even leverage Megaman's own customized abilities and higher HP to assist in blitzing through the narrow dark panel lines. But as long as you take your time and think about how you're progressing through, it should all work out. Especially in this case, as the Dark Soul-controlled Megaman does not have the full access to everything a Dark Soul did in Battle Network 4. At worst, he might use chips you currently have slotted into your current folder and program advances registered in your PA memo. But past that, that's not a battle that gets harder for you just because you have a lot of battle chips. Still, the assembled Navis managed to wrest Megaman from the control of his Dark Soul and bring him back. Hub Hikari, impressed by the power of your, power-type Navi, which easily unlocks Napalm Soul and Tomahawk Soul for use. But also, something else. Because the Dark Ships in Battle Network 5 are actually treated as battleships this time, they can now be sacrificed for use in creating a soul form, which, by following the logic of the last game and .exe access, where the soul form is the light that purifies the corruption of Dark Soul, well, this is that corruption coming back and staining that light, simply because you're trying to pull light from the deepest darkness. And in this case, sacrificing a Dark Ship for a double soul instead creates a Chaos Unison. Chaos Unisons are the quote-unquote safe way to use Dark Ships. They're a one-turn use of double soul that, by using the charge shot, you can then unleash the sacrificed Dark Ship's attack with no HP damage to Megaman. However, you need to release the attack at a specific frame of the animation for it to succeed. If you don't, then not only does the attack fail, but Megaman is knocked out of Chaos Unison, and on top of that, his Dark Soul is unleashed for the rest of the turn to run rampant among the enemies you're fighting. It's a high-risk, high-reward, but completely without ways to mitigate the dangers. Well, most of them. Eventually, people found a way to guarantee that the charge shot would go off without backfire. You press the start button to pause the battle, and check to see what frame the charge shot is on. If it's showing the full charge sphere over Megaman, you let go of the B button and unpause the game. If it's not, you unpause the game while making sure that the B button is still held down, and then it won't go off prematurely. Then you just repeat until you see the right conditions have been met. However, that requires a complete retraining of muscle memory, just for one thing you might end up screwing yourself out of doing, and not for that much greater an amount of damage than you'd be getting from chaining chips together and doing soul form related damage boosting. Much like everything else related to Dark Souls, I don't touch it. Still, most of the public network has been recovered now, just end areas 4 and 5 being left to liberate. And to that end, your team leader's gone out to recruit an information processing specialist by which to help us out. Rika and Searchman in Team Protoman, and Higsby and Numberman in Team Colonel. Rika is of course still a jerk, but less of an outright asshole as he was in Battle Network 4 and his early appearances in Access. Higsby, though, is obviously here just to reuse a convenient and thematically appropriate Navi and his double soul form. No complaints though, Number Soul rocks, especially with how easy it is to exploit. And yeah, Higsby decided to help out when asked because he's trying to become more of a man to finally get the courage together to ask Miss Mari out. Which I freaking swear is characterization lifted from the anime, as I cannot remember at any point Higsby in the games having an unrequited crush on her. Regardless, everyone sets out for End Area 4, in hopes our data specialist Navi can crack the encryption on the last area. Though before you go, grab the upgrades you couldn't in the last chapter of the game. That extra Navi customizer space is desperately needed at this point. Still, in End Area 4, the data Navi finds that they can crack the lock, but it'll take some time. And unfortunately, both of them just had something come up, which works more for Higsby than it does Rika. I mean, let's face it, even with Higsby having other staff members, he's got a popular store to run that requires his time, and the less said about him trying to charm Mari, the better. Rika, though? He's in the military on assignment and placed under the command of Beryl. If Beryl says jump, then the only words out of Rika I'd expect to hear is, "How high, sir?" Still, with the free day to prepare how they please, Lan and Megaman remember, hey, they never did find out what Yurichiro wanted to show them, now did they? Thus, it's time for a trip back to his lab, the only thing of note being a decoded message from the twins' grandfather, Tadashi Hikari. The note itself is pretty much coded nonsense. The largest clue being to some one or thing named Gao. Taking said note to Haruka as, well, she's the only one left that knew Tadashi, makes us realize, hey, there's a doghouse in the back of the house. Yeah, that's not the doghouse from the front that's an odd inversion of setting details. That doghouse you see in the window is a completely separate one than the one that acts as the Hikari security system. Which is funny as they never acknowledge having a dog at any point. And I like how the guidebook once again is the snark we all want with this, when it's revealed the connecting clue has been written on the doghouse in plain sight for a decade. To quote, "How long has that been there?" The writing directs us to the air filter computer on Oran Island, once again showing how overused this place is despite how far it is from civilization. As the game explains later, Tadashi was apparently out here a lot working on one thing or another. In this map, you eventually find another clue from a data cluster that directs us to the top of End City's castle, which thus opens up that region and its oddly familiar castle. Said castle also doubles as a transmission system these days for network activity, and even with the liberations going smoothly, it's having some connectivity problems we have to sort out. Though why our new teammate couldn't handle that when they're here is anyone's Okay, maybe they were dealing with it and we spooked them. Regardless, at the top of the castle in one of the decorative statue's eyes is a data key that, when used at one of the outcroppings in AC/DC 3, opens up a secret door to something called a vision burst, a digital recording of a moment captured in time. In this case, it's one of the day Lan and Hub were born, roughly 11 to 12 years ago. It's here we find a program of Tadashi's dog, Gao, that of the things in the vision burst seems to be the only thing that can actually respond to us. Unfortunately, opening the vision burst allows Nebula's agents in, requiring us to clear them out of here so they won't catch whatever they're after. Unfortunately, it's revealed from this that your new team member might be a Nebula agent, as they come in to back up the heal navis we just deleted. But even when I first saw this plot reveal, I didn't buy it for a second. On one side, we know Higsby. He's a complete dork that gives more of a damn about battle chips than world conquest, as the evil Mwahahaing has nothing to do with those collectibles. And Higsby in the last game was the one to warn us about the dangers of dark chips. It is not plausible for him. Rika, being a strict military type, also doesn't fit the MO for someone doing a secret infiltration mission. I mean, it has been done in fiction where such is all an act, but that's kind of the downside of doing this with someone we've formed a double soul with before. We already know their character. Still, we've got to report this to our team leader, and frustratingly they shrug off the concern, not even raising the point that we do know these people personally to calm us down. But such is addressed the next day when mass network interruptions start appearing, originating from N Town's castle, requiring us to enter the transmission system at the top of the building that's already had its security traps tripped. And that's both in that network and outside it. And while putting together the costume of a samurai on the digital model is an understandable barrier puzzle, especially as there's upgrade items in those computers where those parts are stored, I say without hyperbole that the Kendo Battle Challenge the security system here forces you into is the second most aggravating minigame the games have put in them. Only topped by Kendo Man's battle challenges in Battle Network 4. Ironic that both times I consider a minigame the worst, it involves swordplay. At the very least, the reason I hate Kendo Man's minigame is because the damn thing is so consistently broken in Battle Network 4. Here, it's just because it's an extremely difficult challenge. What you've got to do is hit 100 of these security drones without letting Lan get hit himself. First, it starts out easy, but over time the drones just start coming at you faster, meaning you more and more have to swing at a pace that can knock you off your tempo, leading to missed strikes. And if you miss the strike at the worst time, it's game over and you need to start it all over again. It is a massive time sink if you've not got the timing down, which is actually made worse by the DS version, because the Nintendo DS's D-pad is recessed into the console as opposed to the plus mark being raised. So you need to press harder and be faster on the input to actually get it to respond in time due to the different board type the buttons are laid with. Compared to that, the Gargoyle computer security system at the top of the castle is a cakewalk. This area having you track down ninja programs amidst the region and bring them to their thematically matching traps, while avoiding being followed by the wrong types of ninja. I mean, there's so many wrong types of ninja out there that such a task in and of itself is difficult. Seriously, why is it the grand majority of media featuring ninja are complete trash fires? Getting the right ninja to stay with you usually means doubling back, as they stay in the space their swap occurred in, though that becomes more difficult over time as the chains of ninja programs you have to bring to unlock each trap gets longer. Honestly, I like doing this one, as it's an intelligently mapped exploratory quest requiring you to think of how you travel through the area to get to your goal. Help that this is the area where you can get Moonblade and Katana battleships, which can both end up being dead useful. At the end of all the traps at the main console for the transmission system, we find our Brain-type Navi, the real one. The previous encounter we had with them as a Nebula agent was in fact an imposter, a fact revealed to us after we fight them. With said Navis also being interested in engaging us because there's also a fake Megaman around stirring up trouble by making others think he's still consumed by Dark Soul. Again, no! We will be getting to him later if I can actually continue the anime reviews. Once more, as Searchman and Numberman are Navis we've fought before, and they have the same techniques and tricks from those encounters. So there's no real point detailing over again what they can do. Either way around, they're easy battles with what's available. Though with his fewer hit points, Numberman of course goes down easier, leading to the Navis engaging their doppelgangers and quickly eliminating them, restoring the network, and building the camaraderie needed to move on to the 5th Liberation mission. As I detailed earlier, this is the one you want to repeat for the purpose of rating it for resources. Both Numberman and Searchman's respective number check and panel search abilities are fantastic for getting items out of panels fast and efficiently. With Searchman, Panel Search liberates all panels with an item stored within them that are in a straight line, which combos amazingly with the use of Gyroman or Shadowman to open up deep paths behind enemy lines. With Numberman's, it in fact removes the entire need to liberate those panels, albeit the area of search is limited to a 2x3 rectangle, meaning there's certain layouts where that just won't work. In specific, the set of panels on the left side of the map that have a paralysis trap right in front of them. Regardless of what else you do, that panel needs to be removed so Numberman can search the remaining 3 panels for the barrier key and the items inside, which allows you into the rest of the map. Whereas if you use Searchman for the task, he blows up the trap and gets the barrier key in one fight, and then you have the option of sending your Speed Navi over to liberate the panels with the items, or just skipping them. The difficulty of the map, though, comes from where the second of the 3 barrier keys is situated, right in front of the Dark Lloyd of the map, Cosmoman. Due to its placement, whatever Navi you use to liberate those panels is going to be stuck directly in his range of attack, unless you liberate the panel to the farthest south of him with one Navi, and then one turn liberate the remaining 3 immediately to the north, so the Navis are literally one square outside of his attack range when getting that barrier key. This opens up the larger top left board, where the final barrier key is hidden alongside the final 2 dark holes. Another reason I recommend grinding this mission, though, is Cosmoman himself. He is the strongest Dark Lloyd, and thus his mechanics make him a pain. Thus it pays to train yourself against him now, so his more difficult version does not trip you up later. He summons large ringed satellites to charge across the map, which you can't destroy, and have large radiuses that require a lot of dodging. Or alternatively, the use of invisible and anti-damage chips. Those satellites are the worst, as they block Cosmoman from attack, and it's very rare he comes within close combat distance to strike him with swords. The best way to deal with him, since he likes to hug the back row, is to hit him from behind with lance chips double charged by Tomahawk Soul, or alternatively use Shadow Soul to charge a sword chip to backstab him. As those are both kernel exclusive strategies, though striking with a lance still does work regardless, an alternative for Protoman players is to rely on the Tornado Battle Chip and Gyro Soul in general, with both its charge shot and the chip getting around whatever he tries to blitz you with. With Cosmoman defeated, the main network is finally cleared from Nebula control, and this entire event with the imposters has built a better rapport with the Brain Navi and Operator, giving up search and number souls, allowing the player to more easily seek out better chips to combo together depending on their folder builds. However, Lanzot activities all throughout the Nebula crisis has caused his friends to finally confront him about what he's doing, and thus the secret of the anti-Nebula team is out. But this is something they really should have not done in public, where others could overhear them. Which thus leads DNN reporter Ribita, another veteran of Battle Network 2, and medicine maker Jasmine to both overhear the conversation, and believe Lan might know the way for them to get into the Undernets. I mean, he and Megaman are the kings of it, so... And once again, there's a pretty steep difference in execution between the versions. Rabita, as an investigative reporter and presenter for the network, is looking to, well, save her own career by finally cracking the story about the secrets of Nebula and how they became such a huge threat. Moreover, she's asking nicely, almost begging Lan to help her, but due to Lan's deeper awareness of the full situation, knows it's just too dangerous. But because Lan is a kid, well, the dynamic falls into the standard child-adult interactive relationship, and the adult doesn't listen to the kid, who actually by experience knows better, because of course an adult should be able to handle a situation better than a kid would. Rabita's need and desperation to find a way to save her career is understandable motivation, and her detachment from the depths of her battle makes it more reasonable why she would then do what she does. Jasmine, however, does not have those defenses. No, Jasmine is looking for a secret medical book that is hidden there and doesn't care about the cost of going as long as she obtains it. She is not under a time limit that requires her reject common sense and advice of others in a panic as Rabita is. At worst, she's trying to rush to find a cure for her sick grandfather, but the man is not on death's door to excuse the urgency of her request, or how rude she comes off as in demanding the means to access the region, before impulsively just going, screw it, I'll find my own way in. In both cases, the requests are certainly ones that would be reasonable to ask for escort into the region, especially from its king. But with Nebula still maintaining control of it, it isn't the right time for such for Jasmine to try and find that book. Rabita, once more, makes sense. Nebula's activities are the entire reason she wants down in there, while Jasmine could just wait until the region is liberated, but refuses to. Before reporting this to the team leader, take a detour once more to Oran. You'll find a Nebula agent that defected from the organization there, and from him you'll get a Nebula ID card that'll unlock all the barricaded mystery data throughout the network. A helpful bonus, as when talking to the leader, it's revealed that Nebula might be after what's hidden within the vision bursts, as Regal has been searching for something called the Hikari Report that is key to his ultimate plans. Thus, we have to head back to the Vision Burst, only for the digital recreation of Gao to be absent from it, once more showing the oddity of it. Additionally, we've got to return to Haruka to get any clue about the dog, her pulling out an old pic of Tadashi and Gao, which shows them covered in dirt and mud. But where could they possibly have been spelunking? Why, the only area open to do that in this game is Oran. You see what I mean that setting Oran on an island 2 hours off the coast more and more becomes a narrative complication? Once there, we find a new man out in front of the mine, who tells us the old Navi we got the mine key from before also has a security block passcode that leads to another Navi, who has a key to another vision burst, which is located inside the 4th drill computer, requiring us to once more travel the long trip down into the depths of the mines to get there. This time, the vision burst is of Oran 25 years ago, when mining of the original magnometal vein was first plumbed. Unfortunately, Gao is here, and after a bit ends up captured by Blizzard Man, who has been resurrected by the dark power of the Dark Nebula. And he's not the only one. For as Blizzard Man gets away with Gao, we're informed that Scilab is under attack by Shade Man, specifically to destroy the Mission Control Center the team's leader used up until now. This forces an evacuation of the anti-Nebula forces, Lan charged with finding a replacement home base, though this ends up being a bit silly in Team Colonel, as their new base is situated in Higsby's storage room, which is set up to double as an office, and Higsby could have just outright offered for them to use it, since in that version of the game, he's already part of the team. But the necessity to move their operations has since distracted the team from maintaining the security of the network elsewhere, and Toadman or Medi has made their move for the Undernets, going to try and break open the dark firewall, isolating it off. And this is again why I consider Jasmine worse than Rabita on this, as Jasmine in this event acts like a complete brat and can't stop insulting us for trying to stop them from doing something stupid. Rabita, once more by comparison, actually does acknowledge that. Lan's trying to do the right thing, but her desperation is driving her forwards even in spite of the dangers. and those dangers make themselves evident from the revived Cloudman coming to attack us, and then be brought down by the respective leader navies. But even then, that doesn't instantly delete them. Cloudman pulling off a kamikaze attack that appears to delete the leader navies. This demoralizes the assembled forces. After all, the leader navies held their positions for a reason. They have a track record of success. Lan and Megaman have saved the world on at minimum 5 separate occasions. Why is this so easily forgotten? Well, in this case, it's actually not. Chad and Beryl promoting Lan into the position they held as team leader as... hell, he's the operations head anyways and takes over during liberation missions as it is. By this point, they have the experience needed to do the job. But Lan, once more showing the humility that's generally absent from improper depiction of the character, isn't sure he's right for the job. Up until this point, he's primarily been responsible only for the tasks of himself and Megaman, or is working in tandem with seniors that take the weight of duty off him. Now, he's going to be solely responsible for others under him, and considering his own shortcomings in the past, well, with the stakes they're up against, with all the Darkvoids they defeated coming back, there's a legitimate tension revolving around the question of whether they can win now, with them spearheading the fight. Which is then where the support navies and operator come in, once more attempting to dive deep into the undernet. However, why they're doing this has changed, wanting to wig Lan up to the reality that he can lead them into battle, by charging in after us and through the perils of the undernet to help save someone else. While Jasmine in this is far more of a brat, Rabita by comparison, well, she's followed Lan's story throughout the last couple years of him saving the world. She knows that he's as capable as any adult that'd be doing this despite his young age. So it's time that he believes in the people that believe in him, thus leading into a fight with the support navies. Toadman has had his mechanics changed a bit since his time in Battle Network 2, but like the other returning navies, retains most of his tricks, helped in this case by Rabita giving him C panels to hide himself in. The downside for him, though, is the L chip code possesses the Elect Real chip, which is a very powerful elect element chip that when it makes contact with the C panels, it electrifies all of them for massive damage, including against enemies hiding inside them. This thus makes the fight much easier than it could have been, and comparatively not as much of a pain as they were in Battle Network 2. Medi, however, as is my recurring thing, is useless. Their only notable capability is to throw status effect inducing pill bombs at Megaman, which are all easily dodged. The worst being a healing bomb that steals HP, but that's so rarely used, I don't ever see it. Still, the point has been made, and the support Navi is joining the team to help liberate the last public region of the net. And it's needed. For not only does the Internet Liberation map have a lot of panels and a drought of order points, well, its big boss is either Dark Proto-Man or a reprogrammed Colonel. Admittedly, at least you'll know how they'll fight, but that's a bit annoying to make them the last Liberation boss before the post-game maps. The key to blitzing through this map is thus on Toadman and Medi's abilities. As I discussed earlier, Toadman's life melody can allow another Navi such as Shadow Man to liberate a 5-row long set of panels. Medi's in turn is Twin Liberation, where if, after she sets up a liberation, another Navi like Gyro Man can go to the opposite end of where Medi set such up, and that other Navi succeeds on their end of the Twin Liberation, then the entire length of panels is simultaneously liberated. When used correctly, both of these methods massively reduce the number of order points needed to penetrate into enemy lines. Though both methods will rely on you having mastered fighting liberation battles with viruses spawning on both sides of you to really take full advantage of their circumstances, especially as the barrier keys this time are not always easy to access if the speed Navi is always occupied as a required party in the extended liberation lines. Even then, Medi is only so useful in this, it often being just a safe bet for Proto-Man players to just focus more on Napalm Man's liberations as they open up shorter but more reliable paths. Coupled once more with Medi's notorious weak health and useless charge shot in comparison to Toadman actually having a defensive strat that works with an L-Cold folder and an actually useful charge shot, and you can understand why I actively avoid using her. Sadly, we don't recover our leader Navi from Dark Mind Infestation as easily as Megaman was recovered. Protoman and Colonel running off, but Megaman at least getting the useless Medi-Soul and useful Toad Soul out of it, leaving just one more soul form to recover. Unfortunately, Regal succeeded in getting what he wanted from Gao and Yuichiro's other available information, setting in motion the completion of what the manufacture of dark chips was all about. Soulnet! A network system by which the true malice of humanity that is hidden beneath a mask of pleasantry can be exposed to the world. And in that chaos, he would rule. Hey, dude, if you have to use a network system to mess with people's brainwaves to act against how they normally would choose to, then that's not exactly exposing the truth of things. That's inflicting upon them your own perception of the world, which for them would thus be a lie. Hell, if that malice is their default state, then they wouldn't even be affected by the system at all. The differences between someone being kind and empathetic, or being cruel, selfish, malicious, and sociopathic, is often a simple choice. Remove that choice, and you take away something that makes them human. It does not expose the truth of humanity, it abandons it. Fortunately, Lan and Megaman are immune, and it's thanks to an amulet that contains magnometal in it that they were given earlier, as it screws with the field that Regal's Soulnet is generating. But fortunately, this is the test version, transmitted via microservers with the program planted in various areas, with the hunt to shut them all down, starting in a fake tree in AC/DC, which contains your version's brain navi. Yeah, all of your team members have been affected by this, requiring you to defeat them all once again before you can break the freaking things. This hunt also requiring hunts to tourism kiosks at Scilab's entrance, the NetBal computer back on the Queen Bohemia, the Gargoyle computer's main control system, and ultimately the last one found back in the depths of the Undernet, and guarded once more by Protoman or Colonel, with it taking interference from your support Navi to permit them to be purified of Dark Soul influence, which thus releases Proto Soul and Colonel Soul into Megaman's possession. The Soulnet servers have, as consequence of their use, helped the officials track down where Regal's true base is. So once the leader Navi's recovered, we'll be in good shape to stop them. But before that, however, the repeated inquiries into Tadashi's actions have led Haruka to find an old data disk of the Hikari Patriarchs, which leads Lan and Megaman to one final vision burst in Scilab, which reveals a far younger Tadashi Hikari and Albert Wily, who are shown working to develop a primordial version of the Soulnet long ago, before their ultimate falling out that led Wily down the wrong path. The Soulnet, as explained, wasn't supposed to be used in the way Regal is using it. It was meant to be a means by which to allow people's souls to bridge connections between them for better understanding. Something Yuichiro took a different way than they did with his development of NetNavi technology to provide companionship that helps people interact in good faith without some invasive system exposing their deepest selves without consent. Tadashi Hikari, a scientist of questionable morality. Still, the echoes of past people are a bit more aware, with this echo of Tadashi telling his grandsons that the future is theirs to grasp and yada yada yada. You've heard this speech before. The next day, it's finally time to assault Regal's stronghold. It revealed to be near the top of Mount Belinus, which is a fictional mountain, but it apparently has some geothermal activity as the facility is drawing that kind of energy to run it, this being the key production plant of dark chips the world over. Your Speed Navi's operator will infiltrate the place ahead of everyone else, giving the rest a map by which to speed up infiltration. But eventually everyone will run into roadblocks that can only be resolved by jacking into the control machines of the facility, and requiring you trade use of each Team Navi to get around similar obstacles that conveniently align with their specializations. Though it can take a bit of trial and error to figure out how to advance everyone around the puzzles in turn to their respective gate switches that'll allow the other team members to pass to their next set of switches and gates. Once more, not helped that each of its chief Darkloids are the guards of this place, requiring another fight with each of them that only succeeds in the whittling down of the team's navies, as they're swallowed by portals to that dark galaxy, wherein all dark power resides. And after facing all four chiefs one last time, you can move into the final confrontation with their boss, Nebula Gray. But before that, let's skip ahead to once more talk about the post-game goals. First off, you're going to have a much easier time revisiting the Undernet from now on, as there's an easy access point made available in the Dark Chip Factory to get over here. Second, it is only now that you can encounter the Ghost Navi data of the Dark Void Generals. The reason for this is before this point, each of the Dark Void's data was being harvested and reconstituted by Nebula Grey and the Dark Galaxy, thus explaining how you could fight them in the factory again. But once they're deleted in the Dark Void Factory, now those ghost datas are set free on the net. But you'll need to S-rank their random encounter ghosts alongside doing the same with all the teammate Navis to eventually pass the last obstacles. Second, you should have been able to do it by now, especially with the collection advantages the game gives you, to pick up 100 standard chips. Once you do, you'll be able to talk to a gold-colored Mr. Program in the internet, who will open up a gate to the Nebula areas, and as a consequence release onto the net higher-tiered versions of the viruses you have fought before, which in turn have on them higher-tiered versions of their respective battle chips for use in upgrading your battle chip folder and further completing your collection of them. I vastly prefer this to what Battle Network 4 did with New Game Plus, and New Game Plus Plus. It evokes a retread of the same network areas again, yes, but it's not making it so such is isolated off until you complete every story event again. And if you don't want to do it, then you don't have to do it, as the base game can be finished without doing it. Moreover, if you find out you still need to collect some of the lower-tiered chips later on to complete your library, you can have the Mr. Program close the hole back up again, and the viruses will all revert to their weaker states. This was, of course, one of the most disastrous things about Battle Network 4, too. Once you started your New Game Plus, there was no going back to battle the lower-tiered virus variants if you missed a chip, even making worse the collection play experience in the long run if you had to start the game all over, not because it was bugged up, but because you missed something. But if you are ready to dive deeper, well, you're going to have to complete the 7th Liberation mission, headed once more by Shademan. And if you can complete this mission in 10 turns, you get the Blackwing Mega Chip. Unfortunately, this map lacks availability of both the speed and support navis, so you're going to be heavily reliant on proper use of Napalm Man and Tomahawk Man's abilities, alongside trying to score 1-turn liberations to advance to the Dark Holes and Barricades locations. It's not required for every Navi in every turn, just the first few so as to give you enough wiggle room by which to get the chance to end things on turn 10. Even if you don't succeed at turn 10 though, it's not the worst thing, as Nebula Area 2 has a net dealer that sells the Blackwing Megachip themselves, but for 28,000 Zenny. And to not pay that expense? Oh my yes, you'll want to replay the map once you get better chips if you don't succeed the first time around. Nebula 2 is just a bunch of teleporter puzzles that's a decent breather between liberation missions. But Nebula 3 has the second to last liberation mission to it. Your speed Navi's back and drag your support Navi with them for this, so you can blitz through the mass destruction of panels and lines here. And it's needed as Mission 8 likes to corral how you move in specific ways, thanks to certain squares being blocked with barrier panels to prevent easy passing, but not in a way that completely blocks the path off. It is frustratingly easy, if you are doing things wrong, for the mid-boss enemies to block those off themselves, thus placing a barricade against the speed navis getting behind enemy lines, or getting to the panels that hide spare order points that power your power and support navi's special abilities. And not help that one of the Dark Holes is just surrounded by paralysis traps that will lock up any navis approaching and liberating it, which only further delays your progress by what heavy hitters you do have trying to progress further. Still, if you manage to shut Cloudman down in 12 turns, you'll get the Muramasa Mega Chip from it. At the end of Nebula 3 is another Gold Mr. Program, which requires you have most of the Tier 2 standard chips having been picked up on top of the Tier 1s. This portal does the same as the last one and upgrades all the viruses into the Tier 3s, thus allowing you to grab what standard chips you haven't yet to complete that entirely. But before you go to do that, you'll want to check out the challenges in Nebula 4. For Nebula 4 is a combination of great and frustrating, as if you completed various elements of the game's collections, it'll unlock barriers to a variety of rewards, including both Mega and Giga chips you shouldn't have yet. The tedium of it is one of those gates requires you to track down 5 heal navis that have now spawned in the previous parts of the net, but will only show up if you observe the barrier tied to their challenge. Thus, so you don't have to travel back here an unnecessary trip to spawn them, it's better to come here before logging out to hunt down the Tier 3 battle chips, so you only need to traverse the networks hunting them down one more time instead of twice. Once you're past this room, you should only be missing a couple chips before you've got everything, among them being the Anubis A from the final Liberation mission. I already went over Mission 9 earlier, so I don't feel a need to further elaborate, but just go through it slow. And if need be, abuse the fact that both your leader Navi and support Navi allow you 2 saves per turn on this map to save scum your way around setbacks. Even with the shortcut I detailed earlier, this map is still a pain with how strong the viruses, mid-bosses, and Dark Lloyds are. But get past them, and you'll finally be at Nebula Area 6, where you need to face off once more with the Dark Souls of your team's Navis, and regardless of how well you do against them, as long as you'll win, you'll be allowed into the second battle against Nebula Grey. Log out and come all the way back through, and you can now face the true King of Chaos. Albeit with a bit of a caveat. When you return to face the Dark Soul Navis this time, you're on a time limit within which you have to beat them. Take more than 3 minutes total to delete all 6 Dark Souls, and you'll just face Nebula Grey again. Do so in 2 minutes or less, and you'll have to fight Megaman's strongest Dark Soul. But do so in more than 2 minutes and less than 3, and you'll encounter Base as the true King of Chaos, who when you beat him, will give up his Giga Chip. Return here after that and Base Omega will become a random encounter in Nebula 6, and that encounter will be upgraded in turn, purportedly, to Base XX in Twin Leaders, as long as you're in Base Cross, to face the strongest base you'll ever be expected to encounter in the franchise. Unfortunately, yeah, a lot of this part of the game is a bit impossible to be done. I mean, it can be, and I did it years ago on the GBA cartridge to unlock easier play through Twin Leaders, but man, will it take you a while to do even with the best battleship folders ironed out. Which brings us back to our confrontation with Regal and his perfect incarnation of darkness that is Nebula Grey. Regal activating the true Soulnet to connect the minds and emotions of everyone. And with Nebula Grey installed on the Soulnet server, it will put everyone under his spell and grow the power of darkness beyond all limits. This was the true end product of Dark Chick development, to perfect the ultimate Dark Soul embodying the truth of human malice in digitized form, and through that corruption, gain control over the entire human race. Megaman and Lan are left alone to stop them, the others afflicted by the Soulnet, but immediately after jacking in, the Dark Lloyds come back from dark space to attack them. However, if they can come back from there, so can every other Navi swallowed by it. The team members plus Roll, Gutsman, and Glide holding off the Dark Lloyds so Megaman himself can confront the end boss. The representation of humanity's digitalized evil. Yeah, I'm betting Regal doesn't know that Hub Hikari is a digitalized human himself. Nebula Grey is once more among the harder end bosses of the Battle Network games, and for the same reason as Duo. He has no battlefield on his side to exploit. Worse, his body is not his actual body, but a manifestation of malice itself. The true core you want to hit is the blue glowing wisp which constantly orbits Nebula Grey. Which is of course the difficulty, as you're constantly splitting your attention between Grey's attacks and where the wisp is. Some of your chips, despite the lack of a board, can still hit the wisp if it's in the right spot. In particular, Lance can work at the right times. But part of the reason I avoid Cactus Ball from my L folder is it doesn't work here. Made worse in that you can't steal the panels in front of him. So most sword chips short of casting Life Sword aren't going to work. Fortunately, Lord of Chaos and Twin Leaders are huge damage boosts against him, and could put things back on even footing. Facing the stronger variations, you're going to want to rely a lot on damage doubling, but that's not easy for Tomahawk or Told Souls due to Grey's propensity to break the panels. But even when you win, Nebula Grey can use his own dark power to restore himself, attempting to consume Megaman outright. Problem is, Dark Soul is a digital copy of the malice of a human soul, while as I said, Hub Hikari is a true digitalized human, and thus he has the power of choice the Dark Soul is denied. The power of the Soulnet amplifying the power of his own soul, which allows him to truly incarnate inside the net. This incarnation suppresses Grey's Dark Soul, wrecking it enough for the others to intervene, enabling Megaman to overcharge his charge shot to blow Nebula Gray away. This causes an overload in Regal's Soulnet, setting off the entire facility's self-destruct, somehow. Everyone evacuating the building, bar Beryl. Beryl actually has a history with Regal, or specifically, Regal's father, Wily. Beryl having been asked by Wily to stop his son's mad scheme, as even Wily understood that people's souls and free will are not to be messed with, and should not be slave to anything. The Soulnet is merely a means by which to connect between generations, one that is intended to build a better future, even if you have to tear down what you view as a broken one to do it. Which resultantly gives us our cameo of Dr. Wily for the game to show that, yeah, he is not dead from the events of Battle Network 3, intervening on his son's idiocy to stop his corruption of humanity via Dark Souls for good, consequently giving him a chance to start over by using what's left of the Soulnet to purge from Regal the malice he had wrapped himself in the past 10 years, which was Wily's own fault when he'd believed he'd died. It thus allows Regal a second chance to live his life without the shadow of Wily's legacy hanging over him. Thus Regal can work towards his own redemption in his own time, without the specter of dark chips hanging over everyone. The game ending with Lan and his group of friends finally getting a chance to see the vision burst Yuichiro had discovered that set this entire adventure off. Battle Network 5, to wrap all this back up, is another of the good Battle Network games, and does a lot better with its handling of Nebula than the predecessor game did. A lot of the problem of it, though, is Regal is not as much a focused on antagonist as Wily was in the early games, primarily because each chapter of the story doesn't regularly have intercuts to him and his plans as, say, the chapter structure of the earlier games did. While you can still feel the consequences of his schemes, it stays more firmly focused on Lan and Megaman's perspective throughout, alongside exploration of the recruits and their related subjects. This also shows why the back half of the Battle Network games struggled, in that they lacked meaningful character stories that are made to matter to the overall plot. In 4's case, every character story was only relevant to the tournament and the acquisition of soul forms, but mattered nothing to the larger Crisis narrative about Duo's coming calamity, and few of those tales in any way tied themselves to the Nebula Crisis, which also was not being addressed. While Nebula stays the focus by comparison in 5, it's often felt in the abstract. Without operators for the main boss Darkloids, it likewise feels as if they weren't given much chance for character, and thus we still don't see the scope of them and their power. Whereas World 3 and by proxy Gospel, we met their operators. We interacted with their operators in the games, and their interaction with their navies in turn gave them character. This is something, as I've explained before, is better handled in the anime, particularly with Miss Yuri acting as the point agent for Regal while he himself was busy with his research. And the focus on the Darkloid navies allowed them to retain more distinct personality and actions that would then need to be thwarted. Whereas here, the Darkloids we see are just different flavors of malice. And you know what? Fair enough. Sometimes you need to have someone that is recognized as transparently evil to be able to know the signs of when one is capable of being redeemed. It's that cartoonish stereotype that allows us to see how someone that is nothing but evil can exist, so we can then be on guard for the different degrees of sociopathic malice in reality. But the problem over time is there's a lack of understanding that evil can be born as easily as from an overabundance of apathy, or a lack of empathy for others, that cuts someone off and isolates someone from others that are not like them to put them against the world, or using others to gain their own advantages. A selfishness and self-interest that inflicts themselves on others, and goes out of one's way to hinder others just to benefit oneself. To not think of others or consider them worthy of having rights, choice, and freedom, all to deliberately deny them the capacity to obtain a happy life. Sometimes evil is as simple as a values dissonance, not liking the choices others make, thus working to deny those others all choices which are then made for them, but not in a beneficial way. This nuance is often lost as, how do you present that? How do you show that evil can be born from the abuse of beneficial systems? Of hoarding things that are supposed to be used by everyone until the point that no one can have them anymore because there's not enough to go around. That taking the easy path to a solution can harm people years into the future because in the moment those didn't see the harm, and years later they still refuse to acknowledge that they were wrong, thus kept making victims. These are not simple concepts to represent in a story about fighting the darkness in one's heart, and in this way, this is one aspect where Battle Network 4 could claim some superiority in presenting varying forms of malice born from selfishness. If it weren't for how those with malice in them were constantly presented as idiots as opposed to the true, informed sociopathy the most evil people in our real world are shown to possess. I'm not faulting Battle Network 5 for not going farther into this. This was clearly not what the game ever was going to do, and the games are more focused on the teams and team dynamics in play. But to this day, I can't help but feel it's lacking something more it could be in contrasting these sides and the darkness they've come together to fight against. Maybe it's supposed to be a subtextual theme, especially since so much of the team members are made up of former World 3 and Gospel agents where reform is possible for those who did bad things because of bad decisions. But what is certain is this game is more buoyed up by its exclusive gameplay mechanics than anything. At the very least, however, in this dynamic of a story of empathy versus malice, they didn't botch the presentation of that conflict as much as Battle Network 4 did. And that's because it remembered to stay on point to that story. I will hope to release videos on Access and Stream before we swing back to Battle Network 6, as both series do more expand on the core conflict Battle Networks 4 and 5 made the core basis of the conflicts in their story, and in my opinion, to their overall improvements. But until then, thank you for watching. I'm Shinta, and I'll see you next time.